Mingyue stands in front of a glass tank, and inside it is the experimental subject S11, which the Juchuan biological research team has spent several years recombining genes to cultivate. She studies it closely, realizing it is still in its incubation state. But just when we think nothing will happen, the shell suddenly cracks, and her eyes widen as she notices it is about to be born. Excited, she quickly takes out her phone, saying she did not expect to witness such a moment while working overtime, and she wants to take a photo and send it to her group. As she watches, she describes its shape as cute, like a sea slug, with a body similar to a jellyfish and two glowing tentacles, and soon it fully emerges. Suddenly, things take a sharp turn as electrical charges begin to spark inside the tank, and she panics, wondering if there is a leakage. She rushes to unplug the socket, determined to protect the subject so that years of work are not lost. At this point, I would panic too, because everything is going wrong at once. However, just when she tries to move it safely using a net, S11 reacts first and uses its tentacles to pull her in, wrapping around her tightly. It holds her and declares that she is the girl chosen by the gears of destiny, then drags her into the water. In the next moment, everything shifts as she feels heat and a strange taste, wondering if she is dead. And then water is poured into her mouth from a bottle. As she opens her eyes in shock, she remembers S11 and suddenly sits up, shouting in fear and pushing the bottle away, thinking she is about to be eaten. Yet, to her surprise, it is not S11 in front of her, but Jialan. In this moment, we follow Mingyue as she reacts to Jialan standing in front of her, holding the water bottle, and he tells her that if she does not want to drink, she should not waste it because water is very precious here. Moreover, we learn that he is the Lion King, head of the Milia family of the Garosi tribe. And Mingyue's eyes light up as she recognizes him, apologizing for being scared after being attacked by S11 and almost drowning, and thanking him for saving her. At the same time, she worries about S11, asking if it is all right, while he asks about the beast species and which tribe she is from, thinking to himself that this creature is so strange and that he has never heard of it before, so he must investigate her identity. Suddenly, Mingyue notices the surroundings and wonders where she is, realizing she is in a desert, and screams in shock, remembering she was just in a laboratory. Jialan then mentions Lava City, questioning if that is where her tribe is. In his thoughts, he concludes he has never heard of that place and that she is definitely not a member of his Garosi tribe. Furthermore, he asks why her male left her in the depths of this dangerous desert, which confuses her because of the strange words, tribe and male, yet she notices his ears and lights up, jumping to touch them. She marvels at how soft and cute they are, wondering if it is a cosplay, and when she tries to pull one off, it does not move. She even slaps herself, thinking that maybe S11 caused a hallucination. But then at that instant, Jialan grabs her, pulls her close, and raises his voice, warning her that she is in a forbidden area. As the scene continues, she reacts by holding his tail and hugging it, thinking to herself how real it feels, and how satisfying it is compared to watching lions in the zoo, adding, "I love this. Finally, I can touch a lion." Meanwhile, he wonders if she is approaching him for courtship, and suddenly pushes her to the ground, pinning her hands while pointing an arrow at her neck. She shouts in fear, and he demands to know which tribe she is from while the arrow lightly cuts her, and she realizes that the pain is real, not a hallucination, and she concludes in her mind that she must have traveled to another world and is in danger. Still pinned to the ground, Mingyue thinks in her mind about what she should do next, realizing that space travel like this is impossible to survive, even for one episode. Suddenly, she recalls the voice she heard from S11 in the fish tank saying that she was the girl chosen by the gears of destiny, and her eyes widen as she tries to remember who spoke. Then the voice comes again, saying it is her system, the Brave White. Mingyue blinks in confusion, noticing a yellow thing appearing out of nowhere, and wonders how something like that can just pop up in thin air. She quickly points at it and shouts to Jialan, telling him that this yellow thing is more suspicious than her and asking him to check it instead of interrogating her. Yet he stays motionless, and she wonders if she is even safe and if maybe he saved her. Then the system speaks clearly, confirming it saved her and revealing that it is one of her golden fingers. And she reacts with confusion, questioning what it means and why it brought her to this strange place. The Brave White explains that she is dead in her world because of a mutation accident involving the new subject, but she is lucky to be selected by the system to become the chosen girl of the desert world, who gets the rain buff. As long as she completes the desert oasis tasks, the system promises a chance to be reborn and return to her world. Mingyue panics, thinking about all the years she spent studying, finally getting a job at the research institute, living a busy life without even tasting spanner crab, and now learning that she is dead. She wonders what the rain buff and desert oasis task even means. Then the Brave White starts explaining that this world consists of 4 tribes: Dikadong, Jialuxi, Sainan Yin, and Beilin Hong. Mingyue learns from the Brave White that she must collect the treasures of the 4 tribes, combine them, summon the water god, and turn the desert into an oasis. Then she hears about the rainbow buff, which requires her to kiss Jialan, and she shouts, shocked, remembering that he tried to kill her only moments ago. The system reassures her that he will not hurt her, and even pushes her forward, causing their lips to meet. Jialan, unpaused by the system, is stunned and thinks that she has clearly surprised him. As soon as they kiss, rain begins to fall, and Mingyue sees a special dialogue congratulating her for achieving one of the Raiders' achievements. Jialan raises his hand to feel the rain, thrilled, and lifts her up, marveling that they have not had rain in several years, and asking if she is a goddess sent by heaven. Mingyue panics, remembering that the system promised he would not harm her and should be thankful instead. She explains how sufficient water vapor rises, cools, condenses, and eventually becomes rain. Jialan thinks she is amazing, truly a goddess, even though he does not fully understand the explanation. Suddenly, a scorpion tail wraps around her tightly, and Jialan shouts a warning as Mingyue feels the heat and panics, thinking about how she just calmed the lion, and now this scorpion appears. Saka, the scorpion, claims she is delicious and wants to enjoy her, which terrifies her. Without hesitation, Jialan stabs the tail with his arrow, grabs her, and leaps away, shouting to Saka that she is his female. I would have been screaming too. Saka speaks up, saying that Jialan has been single for thousands of years, but now has a female. And he even breaks the arrow that Jialan stabbed him with. He continues, saying that enjoying the patriarch's female is exciting and suggests they share her. Jialan immediately brings out his weapon and fires multiple arrows, forcing the scorpion to dodge, yet it stretches its claw toward her, insisting that she should be given to him. Jialan commands both Saka and Mingyue to stay put, and then dashes forward, transforming into a huge lion and letting out a roar. Saka, also transforming, prepares to fight. And Mingyue watches everything unfold in shock, realizing this desert world is unlike anything she has known. She debates whether she should run, but quickly decides she is too new to survive alone and remembers how the Lion Man trusted her and carried her safely. She resolves to rely on him to protect her while slowly figuring out how to complete the system tasks. As she pockets her hand, she feels a torchlight. What could she possibly do with the torchlight? Jialan is fully attacking Saka, hitting hard and forcing the scorpion back. Yet it is about to sting him. Mingyue shouts that Jialan should watch out and quickly points her torchlight at the scorpion. She thinks that scorpions are active at night and fear light, realizing that her flashlight coming along was just in time. On seeing the light, Saka retreats, shouting in surprise, and runs away, leaving Mingyue thinking that the giant scorpion has finally fled. Saka returns, furious, shouting at her, blaming the light, and suddenly tries to attack, saying he will eat her alive. Just then, Jialan bites Saka's tail, turning the tide, and then shifts back to human form while catching her safely. He asks if she is all right, and she looks at the shredded remains of the scorpion, thinking about how terrifying and unreal this desert world truly is. She then imagines him scolding her about the attempted attack and hears him calling her to wake up. At the Milia clan of the Jeluxi tribe, Manfei stands outside, worried that Jialan has been gone too long. She sees him returning with Mingyue in his arms and immediately reacts, asking who the female is and why she's in his arms. The children in the clan run toward Jialan as he arrives, excitedly talking about his return. One boy mentions that he brought water and also a beautiful female back with him. A little girl eagerly asks where the female is so she can see her too, and another boy answers that she's at the priest's house. Inside the priest's house, Jialan hands Manfei a bottle of rainwater, explaining that although he didn't find any natural water source, he collected this much from the recent heavy rain. He tells her to give it to everyone in the clan. Manfei accepts the bottles but asks about the female, curious why he brought her back. The children watching begin commenting among themselves, noticing her beauty, small body, and unusual clothes. Jialan explains that she was attacked by Saka in the desert and fainted, so he brought her here, rubbing her hand gently. Manfei worries that resources are scarce and says outsiders cannot stay, insisting the female must be sent away, but he disagrees. He suspects she may be the rain goddess sent to help the Milia clan, pointing out how the clear sky filled with dark clouds and the rain poured down shortly after meeting her. People around start calling her a goddess and marvel at her ability to control the rain. Manfei is shocked, insisting it is impossible because she does not look like a goddess, yet Jialan says they will know once the priest returns to test her with the sacred stone. At that moment, the priest of the Milia clan steps in, noticing the excitement. The crowd greets her and urges her to use the sacred stone to see if she truly is a goddess, while she glances at Mingyue, questioning the claim. The priest holds the sacred stone in her hand and begins enchanting it, asking for guidance to see if the girl has divine power. The stone glows brightly, then suddenly falls to the ground. Manfei notices immediately, worried, but the priest says that even though the stone did not detect power, it should not have lost its response so suddenly. As they watch, rain begins to fall, and people around start shouting that the goddess has appeared. The priest wonders if this girl is bringing a future that was predicted by the stone and recalls a vision of other clans attacking their people and claiming Melia's land. Manfei, worried about resources, suggests sending the girl away, but the priest points out that even without divine power, she could create a turning point for the clan, though it may also bring disaster. Manfei proposes a vote among the clansmen, and everyone begins voicing their opinions. Some women object, saying she cannot stay, while several men express that they want to take care of her and have her as their female. Mingyue wakes up, thinking it is too noisy, and is confused about why people are shouting about a female. At that moment, Jialan steps forward and claims her as his, telling everyone that she is his female and no one is allowed to touch her. He thinks that since the priest has declared her a turning point, he will protect her and solve any disaster that may come. Mingyue is shocked, struggling to comprehend that he calls her his female, while Manfei clenches her fist, thinking this girl of unknown origin cannot be allowed to stay and that she is the only one meant to be Jialan's female. As the night falls, we are taken into Jialan's place as he walks in with Mingyue and tells her that this is where she will live from now on. She looks around in surprise and asks where she will sleep, and he points to his spot and tells her it is there. Then she asks about him, and he calmly says that she is his female, so of course he will sleep with her. This makes her turn red as she reacts quickly, feeling it is too fast since they just met today, and she even brings up Manfei, thinking that the other girl would be sad if she knew. However, her thoughts begin to wander as she remembers that lions have strong bodies and great desire, and she almost lets her mind go too far before stopping herself, telling herself to focus because this is not the time. Just then, he pulls her close, breaking her thoughts, and tells her that Manfei is only his little sister while she is his female partner, which makes her blush again. They fall into silence for a moment before he turns away and brings up food, saying he hunted a wild boar earlier, and she is lucky to have it. Then he cuts it and drops a leg into her hands. As we continue watching, Mingyue looks at the meat and asks how he plans to eat it. And he answers by biting directly into it and licking his hands, telling her to eat it the same way. She reacts with clear disgust, covering her mouth and throwing up, unable to accept it. In that moment, she thinks about how it makes sense for lions to eat raw meat, yet he is in human form now, and she starts to question if this world still follows very old ways. Honestly, I would not survive one day here. Eating raw meat is a big no for me. In this moment, we follow Mingyue as Jialan notices her reaction and asks what is wrong, even offering to take her to Mobai, the fox who has some medical skills, if she feels unwell. However, she quickly says she is fine and instead asks if there is a fire in this place. He looks at her with confusion and explains that fire in their clan is guarded by a special person, and there is none here. Consequently, she refuses to eat the wild boar meat and chooses to eat fruits instead, and as she eats, she thinks about how strange it is that fire must be guarded, realizing this is a very primitive kind of society, and she decides that she will have to teach them skills, starting with how to use fire. Moments later, we see both of them lying on a bed made of rock, and she looks up and thinks that even though they are sleeping on the same bed, nothing is happening, which is a small relief. However, just when we think things are calm, the brave white suddenly appears and questions why she is relaxed, reminding her about her mission and pushing her to act, even telling her to push him down, kiss him, and take advantage of the situation. She becomes shocked and questions how this connects to the desert oasis task, but the system explains that kissing him before gave her the rain buff, and she needs to unlock more to make things easier. She begins to think that it makes sense, and as she looks at him, she admits in her mind that she does not mind, but quickly turns away, stopping herself and blaming those thoughts on the system. Now this system is really pushing her too much. As the night goes on, the cold sets in, and Jialan turns toward Mingyue and hugs her from behind, telling her to sleep well, while she feels how cold it is. Then he touches her and realizes her body is hot, thinking she may have a fever caused by the cold, and immediately understands that letting her stay like this is not safe. He calls out to her, trying to wake her up, but seeing no response, he lifts her and decides to take her to Mobai the fox for help. In this moment, we clearly see that despite everything, he is concerned for her safety. As the night continues, we are introduced to Mobai, the desert fox, as he digs out a hole and proudly talks about making another shortcut to anywhere he wants to go. However, just when he is enjoying himself, he hears his name called, and we see Jialan arrive, carrying Mingyue, asking him to quickly check on her because she has a fever and has passed out. Consequently, Mobai turns into his human form and questions how he was found, even complaining about his sharp sense of smell before stepping closer to look at her. As he observes, he comments on how beautiful she is, and questions what was done to make her like this, even suggesting that if Jialan cannot take care of his female, he should leave her with him instead. Immediately, Jialan shifts her away from him, and the tension rises as he warns him to drop such thoughts, making it clear that she is his female, and both of them stare at each other. Just then, Ximian appears, recognizing both of them, and at the same time, we notice Mingyue struggling as she tries to pull off her clothes, saying she feels hot. Ximian quickly reacts, asking who the girl is and urging them to stop wasting time and check her condition. Then Mobai touches her forehead and explains that she first feels cold and now feels hot, identifying it as serious hypothermia that needs quick treatment. This situation is getting serious really fast. Moreover, Jimian begins to piece things together, asking if Mingyue stayed with him at night in the cold mountain with wet clothes, realizing that this is why she is freezing. Jielan pauses and recalls earlier when he carried her, finally realizing her clothes were already wet, and he admits to himself that he has been careless. However, Jimian interrupts his thoughts and insists that they must change her into dry clothes immediately, offering to bring her own clothes for her to wear. In response, Jielan admits his mistake and apologizes for the trouble, showing clear concern. In the next moment, we see Mingyue lying down in Mobai's cave as she keeps saying it is hot, and Jielan watches her closely, worried. Meanwhile, Mobai comes from behind while grinding something with a mortar and pestle, then tells him that if he cannot change her clothes, he can do it instead. He quickly shuts him down. Then, even though he feels awkward, he closes his eyes and reaches for her clothes, slowly undressing her without looking. And then he puts another dress on her. As he is putting the top on her, she suddenly holds his hand and says it feels cool and nice, and at that instant, he freezes. He then starts thinking that this feeling is strange, and immediately his face turns red before he tells her to stay still because he will finish soon. Not long after, he finishes changing her clothes, and Mobai walks up laughing, saying his shy red face is funny, and reminding him that he told him to let Jimian or him do it. Yet he refused because he claimed she is his female. Then he quickly grabs the medicine from him and says he talks too much, adding that he owes him and will send a wild boar later. However, he responds that he did not save her because of the wild boar, but because of her beauty. Although in his mind, he is already thinking about finally eating wild boar again. Then, as he tries to feed her the medicine, it keeps leaking out of her mouth, and he realizes he cannot let that happen. Therefore, he puts the medicine into his own mouth, thinking it is the only way, and then leans in and kisses her, passing the medicine directly into her mouth. Jielan is still kissing Mingyue to pass the medicine, and at that moment, she slowly becomes conscious, feeling a bitter taste and wondering what it is. Then she opens her eyes and sees him right in front of her. And immediately her thoughts begin to race as she wonders what is happening and if she is dreaming. Moreover, she starts thinking that if this is just a dream, then she can do whatever she wants. And before we can even process it, she leans forward and kisses him again. As a result, his eyes widen in shock, and he quickly pushes her a little while she reacts in surprise. He then coughs and tells her she is finally awake, explaining that the medicine worked. And at that point, she just stares at him in silence. Gradually, she begins to connect everything, realizing the bitter taste was from the medicine and that she was sick, and that he was feeding her just now. Then, as she recalls the kiss, the truth hits her hard. It was not a dream, and she covers her face in shock, thinking about what she has done. I would not even know where to hide my face after that because the embarrassment is too real. Just when we think that is enough, the brave white suddenly appears and congratulates her for unlocking a new skill called lightning, although it is on cooldown and cannot be used yet. Then she lowers her voice, holding her chin as she realizes she can unlock skills like this, and starts thinking that kissing him can trigger the golden finger, even though it is very embarrassing. However, she still wonders if it can be changed, and immediately it responds with excitement, saying it can be changed and that she can try kissing another opposite sex to trigger it as well. Then, as if that was not enough, it points toward Mobai, who is busy admiring her and saying she is a good female and that he did not expect him to find someone like her after being single for so long. At that point, she understands everything clearly and thinks that it is doing this on purpose, and firmly decides that what she wants to change is the method, not the person who triggers it. In the next moment, Mobai kneels down and gently holds Mingyue's hand, introducing himself and saying he is Mobai the Fox. And then he asks if she would like to be his female, even adding that he is better than Jielan because he can dig holes, has medical knowledge, knows how to give massages, and is considerate, small, and cute. However, as we follow her thoughts, she recalls everyone she has met so far and realizes that people in this world are very primitive, since they all keep asking others to be their females, including him and even the scorpion from before. Then she quickly pulls her hand away and tells him that they are not familiar, and immediately he turns into a fox, showing a cute face while asking again if it is really not possible. At that point, she sees his form, her eyes widen, and she starts thinking about how cute and fluffy he is. Then she excitedly asks if she can touch his big, fluffy tail. He agrees for a little bit, and she happily picks him up and starts touching it, saying it feels soft and comfortable. It's just too tempting, ain't it? However, just when things seem calm, he suddenly winks at Jielan, and as a result, he becomes furious and immediately grabs her away, causing her to drop him to the ground. Then he says that since she is fine now, it is time to go back, and without waiting, he walks away quickly while holding her, even as she tells him to slow down. Meanwhile, from behind, he picks up her clothes and calls out to them, saying she left them behind. Then she turns back and suddenly notices something strange, realizing those are her clothes. and as she looks at herself, she sees that she has been completely changed already. At that moment, her thoughts race again as she wonders when she changed her clothes and who exactly changed them. The next day, Mingyue and Jialan sitting together, yet there is a clear distance between them, and she looks away before saying that it was he who changed her clothes. He then responds calmly that she is his female, so it is his duty to help her. And since she was unconscious, he could not ask for permission, which is why he did it with his eyes closed. Hearing this, her eyes widen and she repeats that detail in her mind, then lets out a soft breath as she feels a bit relieved, even mumbling that it is not so bad. However, just as things seem to settle, he suddenly grabs her hand and pulls her closer, frowning as he asks if she is dissatisfied with him. She quickly explains that he has saved her many times and she cannot thank him enough, so there is no way she is dissatisfied. Yet she complains that his grip is too strong and her wrist hurts. Immediately, he lets go and says sorry. Then, still trying to understand, he asks why she reacted that way if she is not unhappy, and she explains that they do not even know each other, that he does not know her name, and she only learned his from others. At that point, he introduces himself as Jialan, the patriarch of the Milia clan of the Jialuxi tribe, and asks for her name and where she is from. She answers that her name is Mingyue, and that she does not belong to any clan or tribe. Hearing this, he begins to think about her situation, wondering if she was cast out or something else. And then he places his hand on the wall and leans closer, telling her it is fine and that she can now be part of his clan since she is his female. This makes her blush as she looks at his lips, but she quickly pushes him away, turns her face, and tells him that ever since they met, he has been calling her his female, yet she never agreed to that. As we continue, Jialan asks Mingyue how he can make her say yes, and she responds that she is not sure, adding that they should get to know each other more. However, almost immediately, he turns into a lion and lets her touch his fur. And as she does, she starts thinking about how soft and nice it feels. Yet, just as she begins to enjoy it, she suddenly snaps out of it and wonders what she is doing, even thinking that maybe it is because she touched Mobai's tail earlier. Then she quickly pulls her hand back and sits down, making it clear that even if he does this, she still will not agree to be his female. And she explains that where she comes from, only people who love each other become partners. He then returns to his human form and repeats her words, trying to understand, and she patiently explains that it means two people who have feelings for each other, who care, feel happy together, and worry about each other. At that moment, she drifts into her own thoughts, thinking about wanting a lasting relationship, yet also imagining a life with two fluffy companions, picturing Jialan and Mobai together, which honestly feels a bit funny. That thought definitely came out of nowhere. Then, just when it seems calm, something strange happens. Suddenly it starts raining, and she becomes confused, wondering if the cave is leaking, only to quickly realize that the rain clouds are forming inside the cave itself. As a result, she begins to suspect that this is the golden finger at work. Meanwhile, he becomes excited and says it is raining again, noticing how strange it is that it is happening inside the cave. Then he holds her hand and tells her she truly is the rain goddess, saying there is no other way to explain this. Before she can react, he kisses her on the head and thanks her for coming to the Milia clan, saying they need her so much. And at that point, she is left thinking in confusion about why he keeps kissing her. As the rain continues, Jialan is still holding Mingyue close. She finally pushes him away and tells him to stop, and he quickly explains that he was just too excited. Meanwhile, she is now soaked under the rain, and he immediately takes an animal skin and covers both of them, saying she has just recovered and cannot afford to catch a cold again. At that moment, she looks up at him and into his eyes, then softly thanks him. After that, he asks her to hold the animal skin for a while because he needs to go inform the village so they can come and store the water, since such a large amount cannot be wasted. She reaches up, holds it, and agrees, and he leaves, saying he will be back. As he walks away, she begins to talk to herself, reminding herself not to lose control and not to fall for a handsome man just because he is kind. On the other hand, as Jialan walks toward the village, he places his hand on his chest and wonders why his heart is beating so fast. Moments later, the villagers are already talking, with one person saying they have never heard of rain falling inside a cave. Another says the female Jialan brought must truly be a goddess, and then someone urges others to move faster and store the water. Meanwhile, Mingyue watches them and thinks about how primitive this place is, noting that they cannot make fire. They eat raw meat, and they store water with leaves and gourds. Just then, he taps her and interrupts her thoughts, asking what is wrong, and she quickly replies that nothing is wrong, then adds that he should take her to meet the priest again, suggesting that they go now. Now we are taken to the priest's house, and we see the priest making an incantation as the stone glows. As we watch closely, she calls on the god of endless light to reveal if Mingyue has divine power, and then she lets go of the stone as it begins to float in front of her. At this moment, we follow her thoughts as she looks at it and realizes this world may be primitive, yet it holds a strange power that even feels useful to her as a zoologist and botany researcher. However, just when it seems stable, the stone suddenly drops, and Jialan reacts fast, pushing her away before it hits the ground and explodes. He quickly checks on her and she confirms she is fine, though confused about what just happened. Then the priest reacts, and both turn to her as she explains she only suffered backlash. Yet this situation is strange since such a thing has never happened before. As a result, he wonders again if she is a goddess, but she admits she cannot see her origin clearly. Although one thing is certain, she is not simple. Consequently, he holds her hand and declares that even if fortune and misfortune come together, he chooses to believe she will bring fortune. Meanwhile, outside, Manfei sees this and feels shocked. And as she thinks deeply, jealousy rises as she questions why this outsider holds his hand and gains his trust so easily, therefore deciding she must get rid of her soon. Just then, a man approaches her with a necklace he made with effort, but she first rejects him harshly, only to suddenly pause as an idea forms in her mind. As if that was not enough, she quickly changes her tone, accepts the necklace, and asks him to do something for her, which clearly shows her plan is already forming. I can already tell this is going to lead to trouble. Now we move into another day, and we see Mingyue walking outside under the hot sun as she cleans her sweater and feels the heat. At the same time, she notices how busy Jialan is, and we see this through different moments where villagers keep coming to him for help. One person reports a missing child, and he immediately goes to find him, while another says his father cannot eat meat anymore and wants vegetables, and he agrees to get it. And this keeps happening again and again as he attends to everyone without rest. As a result, she sighs and realizes that being a patriarch is not as glamorous as it looks, but instead a very difficult job. Therefore, she decides not to trouble him and plans to go back to the cave, yet at the same time, she feels uneasy, thinking someone has been following her all day. Unknown to her, Lacey is indeed watching from behind, and when she suddenly looks back, he quickly hides, making her doubt herself and think she is overthinking. Although I would not ignore that feeling at all because something clearly feels off here. Meanwhile, behind a rock, Lacey lies low and thinks about how cautious she is, wondering if she has noticed him or not. And as if that is not enough, his thoughts shift to Manfei as he recalls her face and remembers how she accepted his gift. Then he recalls her request, where she expressed worry that the female brought by the patriarch might bring misfortune and asked for help to get rid of her, and this pushes him to think of a way to act. Consequently, an idea comes to his mind when he notices mushrooms on the ground, and he decides to move forward with a plan. Shortly after, he walks toward her, waving his hands and calling out to the goddess, which makes her turn and question who he is, and he introduces himself as Lacey from the Milia village, then offers a basket as a gift to thank her for bringing rain. Now we continue the moment, and as Mingyue looks at the basket, she thanks Lacey. Yet as she observes the mushrooms with different colors, she calmly explains they are not edible, and warns him never to eat them if he sees them again. Then she picks one and explains it is called amanita, describing how it contains poisonous peptides and poisonous amatoxins, and how it first causes nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea, then gives a false sense of recovery while silently damaging internal organs, leading to a very high death rate. Hearing this, he becomes shocked, while she throws it back into the basket and urges him to destroy them to avoid harm, also saying there is no need to thank her because she did nothing. However, just when it feels like a simple warning, he suddenly raises his claws and pushes her to the ground, calling her annoying and admitting he did not expect her to recognize the poison, making her hard to deal with. As he pins her down, he thinks about Manfei's request and feels he must complete the task, while she struggles and demands to be let go. Yet he declares his intent to kill her, though he hesitates because of her looks, which makes everything even worse. At the same time, the tension rises as he leans closer and acts disturbingly, but she fights back and kicks him hard in his lower area, causing him pain as he holds himself and struggles to endure it. As a result, he becomes angry and decides she is too dangerous to keep alive, and immediately turns into a giant lizard, which makes her even more afraid as she realizes how easily these people turn into beasts. Without wasting time, she runs away while shouting for Jialan to save her. Run for your life, girl. Now we watch as Mingyue keeps running while Lacey chases her in his lizard form, and the fear keeps rising as she begins to lose strength and admits she cannot run anymore, realizing the village is still far and she may not reach Jialan in time. Just when it feels like she might escape, she hits a rock, stumbles, and falls hard to the ground, and he closes in, mocking her and saying she cannot escape anymore while laughing and stepping closer. However, in that tense moment, she quickly grabs sand from the ground and throws it at his face, shouting for him to go away. And at the same time, she recalls that a lizard's weakness is its eyes, so she aims directly at them. As a result, the sand enters his eyes, and he starts shouting in pain, stumbling blindly until he hits his head and falls, giving her a chance to escape. Then, without wasting time, she runs again and finally reaches the village, but by now she is weak, and as we watch closely, she drops to her knees and stretches her hand forward while her vision fades, calling out to Jialan before everything goes dark and she collapses. However, just when we think she might be safe, Manfei suddenly appears, steps on her hand, and speaks with cold anger, showing she has been waiting for this moment, and she declares that even at the point of death, she is still calling his name. Then folds her arms and claims she will make her suffer a life worse than death. Now we move into nighttime, and we see Jialan walking toward the village with fruits in his hands, thinking about Mingyue and how she must be hungry waiting at home, believing the fruits will make a good meal for her. However, as he continues, he suddenly spots Lacey lying on the ground, which shocks him, and he quickly runs over, calls his name, and then carries him to Mobai. There, Mobai gives him medicine and explains he was only hit on the head by a stone and that it is not serious, yet he keeps pacing back and forth in worry. At this point, Mobai tries to calm him and tells him to sit down, but he quickly denies worrying about Lacey and instead reveals his real concern, which is that it is already night and Mingyue is still not back in the cave, making him uneasy since the outside is dangerous. He decides he must go and find her. Just then, Manfei appears and asks where he is going while also mentioning that Lacey was attacked, trying to draw attention to him, and this makes him pause as he looks at him waking up. She quickly goes to him and shows concern, and then Mobai asks what happened, but he hesitates before speaking. However, before he can continue, she secretly pinches him, making him shout, then pretends to care by patting his head, while he gets distracted by her touch. At the same time, she leans close to Jialan and whispers, pushing him to blame Mingyue. And as a result, he changes his words and claims he does not know what happened, saying he went to hunt rabbits and gather fruits and vegetables but was suddenly stopped and knocked unconscious by the goddess, then pretends to look for his missing things. This makes him furious as he steps closer and questions if she attacked him just to steal his food. This lie is so obvious, but the situation is already getting out of control. In the next scene, we see a group of women gathered in the village, and the mood quickly turns tense as rumors begin to spread. One of them claims that the goddess is not a goddess at all, but a foreign spy. And although another tries to argue that she brought rain, the doubt only grows stronger. Moreover, another woman insists that she is only trying to gain their trust while hiding how she makes the rain. And as if that was not enough, someone adds that she even knocked Lacey unconscious and stole his food, though he is fine. Just then, Jialan passes by, and we can feel the shift as one of them pities Lacey, while he says nothing and simply walks on. At the same time, he is deep in thought, recalling how he has searched the mountain and the whole village since last night, but still cannot find Mingyue, and he wonders where she could be. Soon after, some men stop him and question him, asking if he has found the foreign spy and what he plans to do, even reminding him that he brought her to the village and should take responsibility. However, he does not answer, and instead just stares at them, while one of them insists that everyone is saying it. He remains silent, yet inside, he realizes that what Lacey said last night has already spread. Then, as he continues thinking, he recalls how Lacey earlier admitted he was not sure and was only guessing, and how he himself told him to keep it quiet until he finds the truth. Now, he understands the danger, and he concludes that the most important thing is to clear her name, because if others find her first, they may harm her. As a result, he returns to the place where Lacey was found and begins to examine it closely. He bends down, studies the ground, and then sniffs the air, noticing 2 faint smells of blood that do not belong to him. Then he finds a drop of blood and touches it, realizing that she must have been hurt there. Furthermore, he notices the footprints scattered on the ground, and even though they are messy, he believes that if he looks carefully, he can still recognize hers. And at this point, you can just feel that he is getting closer to the truth. In the next scene, it is nighttime, and we see Jialan push open the door and call out to Lacey in anger, already saying he has found the truth and that he is lying. At once, Lacey jumps up in shock and begins to stammer, acting confused and asking what he lied about. However, things escalate quickly as he grabs him by the neck and lifts him, demanding to know what he did to Mingyue, and then reveals that he found her clothing material on the stone wall outside the cave, asking if he pushed her. At this point, we understand that he remembers everything, how he pushed her down and even turned into a lizard to chase her, yet he still refuses to speak. Then, he continues, laying out everything step by step, saying that after pushing her, she ran, and he chased her in his beast form, causing her to fall and get hurt. In response, he tries to defend himself by saying she stole his food, which is why he did it. But immediately, he is slapped and told that there is already food in the cave, so there is no reason for her to steal. As if that is not enough, the anger grows stronger as he keeps hitting him, saying he tried to keep his lie hidden. But now he has gone too far by plotting against her, calling it an unforgivable sin. However, just when things are about to go too far, the priest steps in and stops him, warning that if he continues, he will die, and the only clue to finding Mingyue will be lost. Moreover, she reveals that she has used the divine stone and seen that she is still alive, and this immediately calms him a little as he remembers her. Then, holding him by his clothes, he gives him one last chance to speak, demanding to know where she went. Now badly beaten, he finally speaks weakly, saying he does not know, but after she blinded him with sand, she must have run down the mountain. Consequently, Jialan stands upright and turns to the villagers, declaring that the truth is now clear and that she is not a spy, calling her the lost goddess of Melia. And without hesitation, he orders them to move at once and find her. And they all respond together, ready to act. In the next scene, we find ourselves in a completely unknown place, and we see Mingyue lying on the floor unconscious until she slowly wakes up and coughs. At once, she feels the hunger and begins thinking about food, craving braised pork, ramen, and pizza, and it becomes clear that she feels like she might starve to death in this place. Moreover, her thoughts drift further as she imagines that if she dies, she will complain to the King of Hell. Saying it is unfair that she was first killed by Subject S11, she researched, and then after coming to this primitive world, she ends up starving after only a few days. Then, trying to survive, she picks up a bowl with a little water and says that she thought she escaped danger, but instead ended up trapped where no one can hear her after she fainted. And she does not even know what happened, since all the water spilled except a little that she now relies on. She drinks it, yet still feels frustrated, thinking it is a waste to die like this. She even complains that the useless brave white cannot help at all at such a critical moment and is just pretending to be dead. However, just when it feels like all hope is gone, something changes, as the wall suddenly breaks open and light shines in on her face, revealing a figure, and it turns out to be Jialan, calling her name. Yet, instead of relief, she panics and mistakes him for the King of Hell coming to take her life, which leaves him confused as he walks closer and tells her it's him. Then he lifts her into his arms, saying he has finally found her and will take her back. And at that moment, she begins to calm down, feeling warmth and safety, recognizing his breath. As a result, with her eyes closed, she calls his name and feels at peace, thinking she has been waiting for him. Right on time, Jialan. Back in Jialan's cave, we see Mingyue lying there while Jialan stays close, watching over her, and at the same time. Mobai comes from behind, pounding herbs as he calmly explains that the celestial flower can heal her body and nerves, and if she takes it for some time, she will recover. However, he also adds that the flower grows in the stone forest where many beasts roam, and he rarely goes there, and he does not have any with him. Immediately, he stands up and says there are some in the clan and that he will go get them. But just as he is about to leave, Manfei arrives with some villagers and shouts for him to stop. At the same time, she is thinking that even after being locked up for days, she still did not die, yet she still has another plan. Then she speaks out, accusing her of spilling the clan's stored water, their only source, and questions how she could be a goddess if she did such a thing. As a result, the villagers begin to murmur, agreeing and saying she must not be a goddess, and even complain that they will not allow their celestial flower to be wasted on her. However, he becomes even angrier and firmly says he does not believe she would spill water without reason, and since they refuse to give the flower, he will go to the stone forest himself and will not use anything from the clan. Then he turns to Mobai and tells him to take care of her, and if she wakes up, to give her food since he left enough in the cave, and he agrees to handle it. After that, he turns to leave in anger, pushes Manfei aside while someone behind warns him to be careful, and before going, he faces her and questions why she keeps targeting Mingyue, asking if she is satisfied now. This leaves her shocked, and in her thoughts, she realizes Jialan is now looking at her with anger because of that woman. This only makes her more enraged, and she begins to think of more ways to kill her. In the next scene, we see Mingyue lying down quietly while things quickly turn tense, and then Manfei steps forward and tells Mobai that she spilled the village water and is now a sinner, asking him to hand her over. However, he refuses at once and says that it is impossible, yet she does not back down and instead warns that if he does not cooperate, they will not stay polite. And then she orders the villagers to take her. Immediately, two of them turn into lions and jump forward, but he reacts fast, picks her up, and escapes through a hole he had already made in the ground, saying they will meet again. As a result, she becomes angry and explains that his tunnels are like a maze full of traps, while one of the lions asks if they should chase, yet she decides not to risk it and stops them, saying there is no need to chase someone who is already close to death. Meanwhile, inside one of the tunnels, Mobai stays with Mingyue and takes care of her, even using hot water on her while she is still unconscious, and then reflects that the tunnel he dug a few days ago has now become useful, even though it was meant for meeting her before. But now it might be blocked, yet he is not worried because he can dig another and has many burrows, so she will not find them easily. He then gently tells her to wake up soon and kisses her forehead, and soon after she begins to cough and says it is hot, which makes him happy as he realizes she is waking up, telling her not to be so weak next time, since she is always like this. Then she slowly opens her eyes and weakly asks if he stayed with her. Yet at the same time, she thinks back to before she fainted, remembering that she thought she saw Jialan, and now she begins to wonder where he is. As night falls, Mobai leans closer to her and tells her she shouldn't talk for now, that she needs to save her strength, and that she is weak and must eat first, but not too much. He promises to get some fruit to fill her stomach, yet she shakes her head. He asks what is wrong if she doesn't want fruit and what she would like instead. She stays silent, and he apologizes for forbidding her to speak without asking first, suggesting they can talk softly to avoid exhausting her. Then she whispers that she wants porridge or soup, and he feels his ears itch, but it is strangely comforting. He wonders what porridge and soup are, having never heard of them before, while she smiles, thinking that since fire cannot be used as she wants, she will improvise. She then says she will eat first to fill her stomach with fruits, and afterward teach him how to make a delicious meal. As the night deepens, she sits up and tells him to drill faster, and he manages to ignite a fire. Shocked, he jumps, transforming into a fox and climbing onto her, exclaiming that it is fire, realizing how precious it is in their tribe. He praises her, saying she is truly wonderful. As she touches his fur, she thinks it is soft and comfortable, imagining that if she returns to her world, she would want to take him as a pet. Suddenly, a celestial flower drops from above, and when she looks up, she sees Jialan. She calls out to him, and he shouts at Mobai, demanding to know what he is doing to her. In the next scene, Jialan holds Mobai by his neck, and he struggles, demanding to be let go. But eventually, Jialan releases him. Mobai jumps back and shifts into his human form, then complains about why Jialan returned so soon, saying that if he had known earlier, he would have left marks for him to take a detour. He thinks in his mind that he was worried Jialan wouldn't find his game, so he left the marks. Yet now Jialan suddenly appears and disturbs his solitude with Mingyue. Jialan, serious and firm, warns him one last time that Mingyue is his, and not to covet her anymore. Mobai responds angrily, questioning whether she agreed and asking Mingyue directly, while she weakly says that she belongs to no one, not Jialan, not Mobai. She feels her body grow heavy and her breathing becomes difficult, and as Mobai tries to rush toward her, she insists that she is not his either, shocking him and breaking his heart. Mingyue starts coughing, and Jialan immediately rushes to her, asking if she is uncomfortable. She explains it is hard to breathe, so he gives her the celestial flower to eat. She collects it and consumes the stamen, instantly feeling better, and she thinks the flower is very effective. Then she asks about it, and Mobai explains, while she reflects that Jialan was the one who found her, and the lizard-like man who wanted to hurt her was locked up by him. She wonders why she was trapped in the water storage place, but shakes her head, deciding to focus on treating Jialan's wound first. Holding his hand and looking at the injury, she thanks him for saving her and for getting the flowers, while thinking about how deeply he cares and worrying that her earlier words might have hurt his heart. Mingyue turns to face Mobai, asking if he has any herbs that can disinfect because Jialan's wound needs care. He scratches his head, clearly confused, asking what disinfect and sterilized mean. Mingyue thinks to herself that this place doesn't know about sterilization, and explaining it would be enough. Then an idea comes to her, remembering that she saw Scutellaria, bicalensis, and Achnathorum splendens explained in front of Jialan's cave, with Scutellaria having antivirus effects and the other helping to stop bleeding. She asks Mobai to fetch them, and after half an hour, he returns with the plants, praising her memory. Jialan is shocked when he sees the fire they made, and Mingyue tells Mobai the water is boiling, ready for the herbs. She puts the plants in and stirs while both men watch, asking what she is doing. She explains she is making a medicine soup to heal the wound and stop the bleeding. Mobai is amazed, realizing she can treat patients and save lives, and he jokingly asks if she will be his master so he can be her apprentice, thinking that since she refused to be his female, being master and apprentice is acceptable and maybe even fun. But before anything happens, Jialan interrupts, picking Mobai up by his hair, scolding him for getting too close to Mingyue. At that moment, a breeze appears to her, announcing that she has unlocked the plant's document's function. We are introduced to Mingyue as she grabs the brave white with her hands, feeling upset that it only appears now after pretending to be dead when she was in danger. She questions its use. However, it calmly explains that even though it is a system, it is not all-powerful and cannot interfere with her actions or choices. At critical moments, she must rely on herself. Then it asks her to turn on a function and hands her a crystal stone. She touches it and it lights up, and it explains that the plant document can store the ID of plants she has identified, such as Scutellaria bicalensis and Achnathorum splendens, and that it has a large space inside. As a result, she realizes in her mind that this travel not only gives her a golden finger, but also many functions, and she begins to wonder how many surprises still await her. Then the scene shifts to nighttime at the dungeon, where Lacey lies on the ground with his face badly beaten, thinking about Manfei and worrying if he has involved her. Suddenly, he hears footsteps and she appears, calling his name. He is shocked to see her and wonders about the guards, but she tells him she has knocked them out and has come to save him because Jialan is being enchanted by Mingyue and may execute him. He is surprised that this could happen for a female. However, she urges him to run and escape. He hesitates, saying he grew up in Melia and has nowhere to go, but she tells him to seek refuge at Zeta's Falcon Desert, explaining that Zeta and Jialan have a conflict, and that he can bring news about the goddess who can make rain to gain trust. In her mind, she plans that Sita will come for Mingwei and destroy her if he cannot have her. The scene shifts again as villagers gather and announce that the patriarch has returned with the goddess. A child asks about the dangerous stone forest and his injury, and he gently pats her head and says he was only slightly hurt. But thanks to her treatment, he has already recovered. We are brought into a tense moment as one of the children reacts in awe, saying the goddess can not only make rain but also treat wounds. And Mingyue simply smiles and says she only knows a little and is not that great. However, the mood quickly shifts when Mobai notices a guard carrying some women and points out that they are Lacey's mother and sister. As a result, a child explains that after Lacey escaped and knocked out 2 guards, everyone became angry and arrested his mother and sister for atonement. Mingyue immediately questions this, saying it is clearly his mistake, so why should they suffer? Jia-lan responds that the mother has responsibility for raising him and the sister for not stopping him. Yet when asked about the father, he pauses and says, "The father is busy hunting and does not take part in discipline." Mingyue rejects this, saying in her hometown, it is the father's fault if a child is not taught, and questions why only the women are treated harshly. Moreover, she adds that she is the victim and has not said anything, so the family should not suffer. And she decides to stop it, walking away as Jia-lan tries to stop her, reminding her she is still recovering. Meanwhile, Mobai watches and thinks her words are not without reason, especially about the father's responsibility, and finds it interesting. I agree with her on this one. Then we are taken to the punishment ground, where Lacey's mother, Zeshiva, and sister Leiwei are tied to a wall while the crowd shouts for punishment again and again. In addition, some men in the crowd speak shamelessly, one saying he has long desired Zeshiva, while another calls Leiwei cute and says they are lucky, and the first even speaks of wanting her to bear his children. At this moment, Manfei stands before them and tells everyone to calm down, then declares that since Lacey has escaped, his mother and sister will pay for his wrongdoing. As a result, both begin to cry, yet she continues and announces that from today, they will be sent to the prison camp, and the people are free to punish them and make them bear children for the village. Just when it feels like things cannot get worse, a voice suddenly calls out from behind, and we see Mingyue step forward and object. We are drawn into a heated moment as Manfei points at Mingyue and says she came at the right time, calling her the sinner who spilled the village's stored water. However, she denies it, explaining that when she woke from her coma, the water was already scattered on the floor. Manfei quickly responds that there is no proof and then orders the guards to take her to the prison camp along with the other 2. At the same time, she secretly smiles, thinking no one saw her spill the water, so there is no way for her to prove anything. Just when it seems like things are about to get worse, Jia-lan suddenly appears and stands in front of her, daring anyone to touch her. Manfei argues back, saying if she's truly a goddess, then she should make it rain right now to return the lost water. Mingyue then thinks she can create rain and use that title to save the innocent people. However, the brave white appears and tells her that her reinforced skill is still in cooldown and cannot be used. As a result, she realizes both her lightning skill and reinforced skill are unavailable, so she must find another excuse. She gently pushes him aside and says she will bring rain, but not now, explaining she needs to absorb enough aura of heaven and earth, and that the last rain used up everything. Nevertheless, Manfei questions how long it will take and warns that if she fails, the village will die of thirst. As a result, the crowd begins to panic, with people saying the water will not last long, that they already have little stored, and asking when the rain will come because they do not want to die of thirst. The pressure keeps rising, yet Jia-lan steps forward and says that before she can call the rain, he will go to Argentina and bring back water to make sure no one lacks it. He then asks if they can accept this, and immediately the crowd becomes quiet and afraid, then quickly agrees, saying as long as there is water, they accept. That was a bold move, I won't lie. We are drawn into a tense exchange as Mobai asks Mingyue what it means when she objected, and she explains that she is against the punishment placed on the mother and daughter by Manfei, pointing at them and telling the people to release them at once. Even though she feels scared inside, she decides to try, and as a result, Zeshiva and Leiwei are moved and call out to her as the goddess. However, Manfei argues that Milia has always punished relatives like this and asks what right she has to object, while other villagers also question her. Nevertheless, she stands firm and says that as the goddess, she is here to change what has always been done and correct injustice, explaining that the one who makes a mistake should bear it alone. She adds that the men do not see the unfairness because they are always in a better position, and then questions Manfei directly, asking how she can allow others to punish the women and force them to bear children. At this moment, Manfei becomes silent, and she turns to the female villagers, warning them that one day the same thing could happen to them. Then a male villager speaks up, asking if they should just ignore Lacey escaping. However, she responds that if they do not want that, they should go find him instead of bullying weak women and children. She points to the sky and says that God is watching everything, and even says the reason she absorbs aura is because of their cruel and foolish actions. As a result, Leiwei, still tied, cries out for help and begs not to be sent to the prison camp, while the female villagers begin murmuring, some admitting the tradition feels wrong, others asking why only women must pay, and an elderly woman cries out that it is cruel and asks for help. Just when it feels like change might happen, a man suddenly picks up an axe, rejecting everything and thinking about how he wanted to use the Shiva and Lei Wei for himself and make them bear children. Without hesitation, he swings the axe toward Mingyue. At this moment, we watch as danger rises fast, because just as the man throws the axe toward Mingyue, Jialan reacts at once and shoots an arrow that breaks the axe into two. As a result, he becomes very angry and steps forward, asking what anyone thinks they are doing to the goddess. Without delay, he shoots another arrow into the man's thigh as a warning, and then makes it clear that the next arrow will not spare his life. Moreover, he supports her words and says the way of punishing families is foolish, and because of this, the village now lacks the aura needed for rain. Then he holds her hand and declares, as the patriarch, that from now on, each sinner will answer for their own wrong and the punishment of families is ended, and immediately everyone echoes this and shouts, "Abolished." Although some people are clearly not happy, we can feel the power shift. Then she thinks quietly that she is lucky to have him, because alone she would not be strong enough. And when he asks what is wrong, she simply smiles and thanks him for always standing by her, while he brushes it off like it is nothing. However, Manfei grows even angrier and reminds Jialan about going to Argentina for water before leaving. And in her heart, she plans something worse involving Lacey and Sita. Meanwhile, the ropes on Zesiva and Lei Wei are removed, and she walks up to them and tells them not to be afraid and to go home. And Lei Wei hugs her with thanks, while she assures them that if anyone bullies them because of Lacey, they should come to her and Jialan so they can punish them together. As they leave, he watches her and wonders how many more surprises she still has. Yet just when we think things are calm, a woman named Una cries out in pain, saying she is about to give birth. Consequently, he quickly orders people to take her to the priest's house, explaining that in his clan, childbirth is sacred, and he must be there. Then she holds his hand and asks where he is going. And after hearing his reason, she decides to go with him. Now we move to the priest's house, and the moment feels tense because Una is crying out in pain and saying she cannot do this and does not want to give birth, since it hurts so much. However, the priest simply speaks, calls for a blessing, asks that their people be born smoothly, and then starts chanting. Meanwhile, Mingyue looks around, wondering what is happening. To her, it feels like a joke, and she cannot understand how chanting alone can make things go well. Honestly, I would be confused too at this point. Meanwhile, the pain does not stop, and Una keeps crying that it hurts until she suddenly faints, which makes the situation worse. Consequently, Jialan shouts that she is now unconscious, and the tension rises even more. At the same time, Mobai rushes in with help, saying he has something that can keep her awake. Yet the priest stops him and says there is no need, and even claims that the baby may not have a destiny with their clan, while also questioning why God is not giving them a child. This makes the moment even more serious. Mingyue steps forward and challenges him, asking if he is really going to give up on both her and the child, but he insists there is nothing else they can do. Nevertheless, she refuses to accept this and says they can still be saved, and she declares that she wants to try to deliver the baby herself. At that point, we see her thinking that the medical first aid course she took before may finally be useful. At this point, we see the priest about to speak. However, Jialan steps in and supports Mingyue, saying she should be given a chance because even if it fails, it is still better than doing nothing. In addition, Mobai agrees and reminds everyone that they have tried many ways before and failed, yet since she is the goddess, he believes she can save them. As a result, the priest finally agrees and asks her to try, while praying for a blessing on their clan. Then she quickly begins giving orders, asking him to bring herbs to restore Una's strength, and he agrees and leaves at once. At the same time, she turns to the other and asks for herbs first, then a small knife, a hide, and hot water made by fire. However, the mention of fire causes concern, and while she checks Una's stomach, she explains that after the water breaks, the baby can lack air, and there is little time left. This makes things urgent, yet he says getting a knife and hide is easy, but making fire and boiling water is hard since the fireplace is far. Nevertheless, she holds his face and calms him, reminding him of how she taught him to make fire by drilling wood, and he remembers at once and runs to do it, while the priest also offers water from home for use. Meanwhile, outside, the villagers gather and begin talking, wondering about Una's condition. Some say things were bad because the priest gave up, but the goddess is now trying, while others question why Mobai is not inside helping. Then the scene shifts, and we see him drilling wood, then successfully creating fire. This shocks the villagers, and one is amazed and points it out, while he proudly says this is what the goddess taught him. After that, he starts boiling water, and more villagers gather, praising her again and calling her a treasure sent by God. Some even want to go and worship her and ask for forgiveness. However, he stops them and tells them to wait, saying it is busy inside and makes it clear that she is fighting to save the newborn, so they must not go in and cause trouble. Now we return inside the priest's house, and the tension is still high as Mingyue stays beside Una and leans close to her face, calling her to wake up because her child still needs her, and she cannot give up like this. Then we see her thinking fast, remembering what to do when someone is unconscious, and she begins pressing key points, rubbing areas, and using acupuncture points, doing everything step by step. Moreover, she adds herbs and hopes they help. And after all this effort, Una finally opens her eyes and sees her, which feels like a turning point. Then she quickly gives her something to eat to help her regain strength and calmly guides her to relax, breathe deeply, and not waste strength. Just then, Mobai rushes in with hot water, but she says it is not enough and assigns Jialan to keep heating more, and he agrees and steps out. After that, she continues working, using hot water to clean her body and help the process move faster, while he massages her points to ease pain and help her relax. And she declares that the real battle has now begun. Everyone plays their part, and we see him rushing with more hot water as time passes. And after a long struggle, success finally comes as she holds the baby and announces that the child is born and healthy. Then hands the baby to Una and praises her effort, and she responds with joy at seeing her child. At this point, everyone is tired and Mobai lies down, saying it is finally over. And he is exhausted but amazed, while the priest feels thankful that God has not abandoned them. Then Jialan gently wipes her sweat and thanks her for her hard work, and she smiles as their faces come close. Just when we think the moment is calm, the villagers call out to the goddess and bow down, asking for forgiveness and promising to listen from now on. Now, this is a full turnaround from how they treated her before. At this point, we see Mingyue calm everyone and ask them to stand up, explaining that she does not blame them for what happened before and wants them to rise and speak properly. At the same time, she thinks about how her position has suddenly risen and that she must keep it steady. Just then, Una's baby starts crying, and she picks the baby up and gently pats it, which makes the villagers praise her even more and call her kind. Then she shifts the moment into learning and tells them that she heard from Mobai that they want to learn how to make fire, so she begins teaching them simple ways, saying that apart from drilling wood, they can strike two hard stones together to create fire, or even use sunlight with a curved stone surface to reflect light and start fire, and she offers to teach anyone who wants to learn. As expected, many villagers raise their hands eagerly, showing their interest. After that, the priest walks up and gives her a knife, asking her to carve the methods onto a slate so they can keep learning every day, and she agrees. Then hands Una's baby to Jialan and asks him to hold it, and he takes the baby while blushing. He then imagines having children with her and a future with her. Then, after some time passes, we see her finish carving and explain that she used pictures to make it easier to understand, pointing out how to make fire. In addition, she asks if they have ever had stomach pain from raw meat or water, then advises them to use fire to cook food and boil water so they will not fall sick anymore. Then Jialan notices another drawing and asks about it. She explains that it is a solar distillation method for collecting water, especially in dry areas. And she carefully explains each step, from digging a hole and placing a container, to covering it with a leaf and using a stone to guide water droplets into the container. At this point, we see Jialan react with shock after hearing her idea, wondering if water can really be collected that way. Mingyue calmly nods and explains that even though the amount is small, it can still solve urgent needs. At the same time, she smiles and thinks about how sunlight raises the heat in the soil and air, which leads to evaporation and then water formation. She continues by adding that she has also written down methods for baby delivery and care after birth, explaining that this will help women recover well. Then she invites both Jialan and Mobai to take a look, and the reaction is instant, because Mobai becomes excited and praises her, asking how she knows so much, and soon the villagers all shout in support of the goddess. Moreover, she reflects on how her knowledge in maths, physics, and chemistry helps her stay strong even in this strange place. However, not everyone is happy, because Manfei watches from the side and thinks about how she expected her to fail. Yet she succeeded and gained praise. And then dark thoughts begin to form as she considers harming her so Jialan will no longer like her. Soon after, we see Mingwei, Mobai, and Jialan walking away as the villagers say goodbye, and she responds in kind. As they head back, Mobai brings up the plan to go to Argentina for water, warning that Zita now controls it and that it may be dangerous because of the past conflict. However, Jialan stays firm and explains that even though she has helped for now, he must still bring water for storage and keep his promise to the clan. Then he turns to her and asks if she will go with him after preparing supplies tonight. As a result, she brightens up and agrees, while he assures her he will stay close and protect her. Then she suddenly brings up a small green stone and asks if he has seen it before, explaining that she found the broken pieces before she fainted in the underground cellar, and suspects the owner may be the one who spilled the stored water. At that moment, Mobai recognizes it and says he has seen it before, revealing that Manfei used to wear a necklace made from those stones. We see Mingyue's face light up as she realizes the truth, and she says Manfei. Then she holds the stone tightly and decides that before they leave tomorrow morning, she must talk to her directly to avoid more trouble. Then Jialan agrees and says he will go with her to find her before they leave. Then Mobai adds another thought. asking about the need to absorb the aura of heaven and earth to make rain, and if there is a way to make it faster. However, she becomes awkward and says there is no way. Yet in her mind, she thinks about the skill still being in cooldown, and even when it ends, she imagines herself kissing him to trigger it, which makes her feel shy as she covers her face. Honestly, I would be embarrassed too. Then Jialan speaks again and says that even though she can make rain, they cannot depend on her alone. Instead, they must solve the water problem themselves and even turn the desert into an oasis, even if it means digging tunnels to bring water from rivers. Mingyue wonders how big his ambition is, and she also connects it to the mission mentioned before. Then Mingyue speaks and shares what she has heard about 4 tribes: Dikadong, Jaluxi, Sainan Yin, and Bailin Hong, each holding a treasure, and that combining them can summon god water and turn the desert into an oasis. At this point, both Jialan and Mobai shake their heads, showing they do not know anything about it, and he says they can ask around to find out more. And we return to Jialan's cave at night, and we see Mingyue lying on the bed while holding the green stone. She thinks about how Jialan and Mobai have gone to prepare hides and food, and she wonders if everything is going well for them. However, just when things seem calm, she suddenly hears a sound and she stands up and walks out, calling out to him, asking if he is back. Yet, as she steps forward, she triggers a trap and gets caught in a net, and although she struggles, she cannot escape. Then she notices a female figure standing there, asks who it is, tells her to let her down, and at the same time starts thinking it might be that woman. Then the figure speaks harshly and points a knife at her, telling her to be quiet. However, she refuses to obey, and says she does not even know who she is. So why should she listen? As the tension rises, Mingyue quickly takes out the knife the priest gave her earlier and cuts the net open, and she remembers in her mind that after the Lacey incident, she has been carrying a small knife for self-defense. Then, after falling to the ground, she pulls off the figure's cap and realizes it is Manfei, and immediately reacts. At this point, the other reveals her plan and says she wanted to destroy her face and ruin her. And now that her identity is known, she cannot let her live. And then she attacks with a weapon. Just when it looks dangerous, Mingyue reacts fast, grabs sand and throws it into her eyes, making her unable to see, and then strikes her down and pins her to the ground. As if that was not enough, Jialan arrives at that moment and asks what is going on, yet Manfei quickly pretends to cry and lies that Mingyue is trying to kill her and asks for help. However, she gets angry and pushes back against the lie. Putting up a fake act, I expected better. Jialan then turns to Mingyue and calmly tells her not to worry and that he will handle everything. As he stretches out his hand, she pauses and thinks about how he trusts her without doubt, which makes her accept and place her hand in his. However, Manfei quickly reacts, calling out to him with tears in her eyes. Jialan then kneels to her level and reminds her that her father once saved him as an orphan, and that he has always been grateful. And also that they grew up together, so he has always seen her as a sister. Then he gently wipes her tears and admits that he may have spoiled her too much, which led her to become arrogant and harmful, especially toward Mingyue, whom he now declares is his female and her sister-in-law, and that he will not allow her to hurt her. Yet even with this, Manfei continues to act and denies everything, saying it was Mingyue who wanted to kill her. But he suddenly becomes angry, stands up and questions her lies one by one. He asks if she really expects him to believe she set up the net and prepared the knife herself, especially since the trapping method was one he taught her. At this point, she tries to respond but cannot, and then he presses further, asking why she was in the cellar and if she was the one who spilled the water, hoping she would finally tell the truth. However, she refuses again and denies it. In her mind, she fears his anger and knows admitting it would ruin her, so she shifts the blame to Lacey and claims she saw him spill the water. Saying that he threatened her into silence and even said he would make her his female and offer her to Sita, and also put the blame on Mingyue. She then adds that she was scared and had no choice, and finally reveals her true feelings, saying that he was originally hers, but since Mingyue came, he only cares about her, and she hates her. We watch as Jialan turns to Manfei and firmly says that this is not an excuse to slander and hurt others. He tells her to quickly apologize to Mingyue, tell the truth to the whole clan and promise never to do it again. Otherwise, she will no longer be his sister, and he will not be soft anymore. Immediately, she panics and reaches out to hold him, begging him not to abandon her, and then softly says, sorry, yet he still demands a proper attitude. Then she kneels on the ground and apologizes to Mingyue, promising that she will clear the misunderstanding with the clan the next morning and tell them the truth, and even says she's willing to go along to carry water to make up for her sins. However, in her mind, she feels uncomfortable apologizing, yet still hopes that going with him will help improve their relationship, while we can already sense something is not right. And honestly, this kind of apology does not feel sincere at all. Then Mingyue responds and accepts the apology for Jialan's sake, yet in her mind, she admits she does not fully believe her words, although she remembers that he owes her father and has helped her many times, which makes her choose to let it go for now. Then she calmly suggests that if she wants to atone, she should be responsible for managing the transportation team and escorting the supplies for water replacement. And he agrees with this plan. After that, he explains that tomorrow morning he and Mingyue will go out first to learn the nearby terrain and look for a water source, while other clan members will carry the supplies, and Manfei will go with them. On hearing this, she is shocked inside because her plan to get closer to him fails. Yet when he asks if she does not want to go, she quickly smiles and agrees. While in her mind, she hides her anger and blames Mingyue, and even plans to deal with her later when they reach Argentina. And at that moment, we can clearly feel that the conflict is far from over. The next morning, Mingyue asks Jialan if they should set off. As she stretches, she wonders how they will travel on foot. Yet just then, he suddenly turns into his lion form and tells her to climb onto him. At first, she is surprised, asking if he really wants her to ride on him. But when he confirms, she becomes happy. And in her mind, she cannot believe she is about to ride a lion. Then, as she places her hand on him, she begins to explore with excitement, touching his back, his tail, and even his ears, enjoying the soft fur and hugging him tightly while saying she loves it. However, as she enjoys the moment, he reacts and asks if she likes him that much. While in his mind, he feels she is touching sensitive parts, yet she openly says she really likes it, thinking that anyone would love a big fluffy cat like this. Then he responds in a deeper tone, saying she said it herself, and when their job is done, he will respond to her properly. At that time, she will not be allowed to refuse. This makes her suddenly pause and think about what he means, yet before she can think more, he begins running. As they move fast, she enjoys the speed and comfort, but still keeps thinking about his words. After some hours pass, they arrive in Argentina. Mingyue is amazed and looks around, calling the place lively, while Jialan explains that it is one of the few towns in Jialuxi with a river. It is also a trading place between Jialuxi and Sainanyen, which makes it more prosperous. Then she understands how different it is from Milia. As she continues to look around, she suddenly bumps into a man and quickly apologizes. However, he notices her beauty, and in his mind, desires her. And just like that, he asks her to become his new female, even while his current female and child are right behind him calling out to him. As if that is not enough, more men gather around, showing off and making the same request. This makes her react immediately, shout at them, question why they are seeking more mates despite having families, and angrily call them out. Jialan steps in at once, holding Mingyue by the waist and pulling her close, making it clear that she belongs to him and driving the other men away. However, as she stays in his arms, she begins to feel something new, because instead of resisting, her heart starts beating fast and even she does not understand why. Then he pulls her along, telling her they should leave, and just like that, the scene shifts. Meanwhile, in another part of the market, we are introduced to Zine, who is being pressured by the market owner to pay rent with a piece of hide. However, he admits his business has not been good and offers a stone instead. Unfortunately, that idea is rejected harshly, and he is insulted and pushed aside, called weak and useless. As he falls, we see Mingyue notice something shocking, because her eyes land on the stone and she realizes it is a huge diamond, something extremely valuable. Then, moved by what she sees, she helps him up and checks if he is hurt, and he says he is fine. However, before things can settle, the market owner notices her and immediately shifts his attention, calling her pretty and dismissing the man again as weak. He then stretches his hand toward her and boasts about his strength, suggesting she should go with him instead. As we watch closely, Jialan steps in at once and grabs the market owner's hand, stopping him, and we feel the tension rise immediately. He questions him, and before anything more can be said, the man recognizes him and calls him the Lion King, clearly shaken. However, before he can even finish speaking, he is thrown away and crashes hard to the ground. Then, in fear, he runs off while shouting that this is Lord Sita's territory, and that he will report everything. Meanwhile, she turns and recalls what Mobai said about the conflict, asking if they should stop the man. Yet people around begin to whisper, recognizing Jialan as an enemy. However, he stays calm and says there is no need, because even if one is caught, others will still spread the news. And since it is enemy land, they will meet him sooner or later. He makes it clear he is not afraid. Then, shifting the moment, he speaks to Zine and offers an animal skin in exchange for the stone. Although the man refuses and offers it as a gift out of thanks, he still insists, gives the skin, and takes the stone, and making it clear he only acted to protect his female. After that, he hands the stone to her, and she smiles as she accepts it, clearly happy. And inside her mind, she values it greatly as a 10-carat diamond, thinking of keeping it safe for the future. As if that was not enough, the scene moves again as Meng Tai appears with camels, calling out to the patriarch. And we learn he is from the Milia clan as well. He confirms that the goods for the water exchange arrived safely, which brings some relief. However, the mood shifts when she asks about Manfei, since she was supposed to come along, and he explains that she separated from them to visit a friend in Argentina. This raises doubt at once, and when she asks Jialan about it, he admits he knows nothing, making the situation feel suspicious. Then, just when we think we have seen it all, the scene cuts to Sita's palace, where Manfei is now with Lacey, and we see her comment on how much he has changed and how well he is living. He admits it is all thanks to her guidance, because meeting Lord Sita gave him a better life, with no worries about water and many people around him. Then she pushes her goal forward, asking him to speak well of her and help deal with Mingyue quickly. And in her thoughts, we see her desire to rise higher and escape her struggles. Meanwhile, he reassures her, and we are left watching as things quietly build toward what is coming next. As we move into Sita's chambers, we see Lacey and Manfei standing before Sita, and the moment feels tense as he notices she has been brought along. Then Lacey confirms it and introduces her properly as the daughter of the former Melia patriarch, and at that point, we can already feel something is off. Meanwhile, in her mind, she feels annoyed, thinking about how he behaves and comparing him to Jialan. However, she quickly shifts and brings up Mingyue, telling him about the rain goddess and revealing that she is already in Argentina, asking him to capture her quickly. Although he agrees to catch the goddess, he makes it clear it is not urgent. And instead, his focus turns to her beauty, stepping closer and lifting her chin as he recalls her past with Lacey. Then he openly declares that he wants her, asking for Lacey's opinion, and shockingly, he agrees without hesitation, saying he brought her as an offering. At that moment, she reacts strongly, pulling away and slapping his hand, declaring her status and warning him. However, he ignores all of that, forces himself on her, and asserts his power over Argentina, making it clear no one can oppose him. As she struggles and calls out for Jialan. Low-key, I'm glad things turned out like this for her. Meanwhile, in another scene, we see Meng Tai, Jialan, and Mingyue at the water bank, and things seem calm for a moment as he arranges the water on the camels and confirms they have gathered enough to last a long time. He suggests they send the water back first while the others stay and enjoy the nearby villages, which sounds like a good plan. However, that peace does not last, because she suddenly notices the market owner from earlier returning with guards, and she realizes he has reported them. Immediately, Jialan steps forward and decides to draw them away, telling Meng Tai to take her out of Argentina and meet outside later. He agrees. Still, she shows concern, reminding him that this is enemy land and he must be careful. In response, he reassures her with a calm smile and tells her to wait for him. As the tension rises, we see Jialan step forward and face the market owner directly, asking if he is the one being searched for, and the answer comes with mockery, as the man calls him fearless in the face of death. Immediately, he orders the guards to capture him and offer him to Lord Sita, and just like that, they rush forward. However, he stays calm, pulls out his dagger, and challenges them, and before we know it, he fights through them one by one until they are all down, leaving only the market owner behind. Then he moves fast toward him, and as the man panics and tries to stop him, he is pushed down and held at knife point. Just when it seems over, he brings up Manfei, revealing she is now in Zita's hands. He even shows the green stone as proof, claiming it came from her. At that moment, everything shifts, and instead of ending him, he orders him to stand and take him straight to Zita. Meanwhile, in another scene, we see Mingyue and Meng Tai waiting outside Argentina, expecting him to return. Yet time passes, and worry starts to grow. She begins to think about why he has not come back, and just then, footsteps are heard. She turns quickly, full of hope, calling out his name, but instead, she is met with Lacey. As if that was not enough, he appears calm and familiar, greeting her, but before she can react, he captures her and throws her into a prison cell. Next, we see Mingyue lying on the floor, feeling the heat as she struggles. Then a voice calls out, making her look up. And we are introduced again to Zine. He recognizes her at once and questions why she is here when she should have already left, while she also remembers him as the one who sold diamonds at the market. Then he introduces himself properly and asks about the man who was with her, wondering why he is not here. She lets out a breath and says it is a long story. At that moment, her face turns sad, and we can feel her worry as she thinks about Jialan and hopes he is safe. Then he pokes her, bringing her back. He tries to comfort her, telling her not to be afraid, and quietly shares a plan. He explains that at night, when the guards relax, he will turn into his beast form, fly out, steal a knife, cut the ropes on the door, and help her escape. Curious, she asks what his beast form is, and he answers that it is a type of corvidae, a Didolf's ground jay. However, she quickly thinks ahead and points out that even if they escape the dungeon, there are still many guards outside, so they might be caught again. Then, as she remembers the cactus growing nearby, an idea forms, and she decides to take the risk. Then night falls, and just as planned, Zine transforms and flies out, gets what is needed, and returns, dropping it into her hands. He asks what it is, and she explains that it is cactus thorns soaked in datura flower liquid, something that can cause hallucination and make a person fall unconscious. Then, in her thoughts, she feels relieved that the guards did not recognize the flowers when they searched her earlier. Right after that, she tells him to watch and throws the treated cactus toward a guard. Almost at once, the man begins to feel itchy and dizzy, and then collapses to the ground. Seeing this, Zine is shocked and amazed by how effective it is. Now in Argentina's palace, we are drawn into a tense moment as some guards walk together and talk. One of them says he heard that Lord Zeta got a beautiful woman from Melia, the daughter of the Melia patriarch. At the same time, Mingyue and Zine are behind a wall, quietly peeping at them. Then another guard speaks with envy, saying Lord Zeta must already be enjoying that beauty. Hearing this, she begins to think deeply, realizing that the daughter of Melia's patriarch must be Manfei. Then a thought hits her, and she wonders how she fell into Zeta's hands and whether Jialan arrived late because of this. However, before she can think further, he interrupts and quickly points out that there is a hole with no guard, and they can escape. Yet, instead of leaving, she tightens her grip and decides she has something to do. In her mind, she admits that although that person has always targeted her, she has been kind to him, and she cannot just stand and watch. Moreover, she also believes he might be there as well. Then he insists on going with her, saying more people means more strength, and even though he is not strong, he will protect her by turning into his beast form and attacking anyone who dares harm her. She thanks him, and they move carefully. As they continue, they peek again and again, hiding each time they see guards. Time passes, and after half an hour, he admits that the palace is too large. She agrees and adds that Sita is truly disgusting and a jerk. He supports this, saying it is wrong to capture so many females and imprison them. Just when it feels like they have seen it all, they open a door and discover many women tied up inside. One of them cries out, asking if they were also caught and begging for help, calling Sita a devil and saying she wants to go home. At that moment, she steps forward and decides to help. She begins cutting the ropes one by one, and after finishing, she lets out a breath, feeling relieved that they still have a chance to save them. She then hopes they can escape far away and never fall into Zeta's hands again. Now we move deeper into the palace, and Zine calls out to Mingyue, telling her this is the last room on the floor. Just then, one of the women who was captured steps forward and thanks her for saving them. She also explains that all the women taken by Zeta are kept on this floor, and if the person she is looking for is not there, then she has likely been tortured already. Hearing this, she grows tense and silently hopes Manfei is still alive. Without wasting time, she takes a breath and pushes the door open, and suddenly we are faced with a shocking scene as Sita is on top of Manfei. At the same time, she is shouting that she will kill him, yet he does not stop and instead bites her mouth and tells her to kill him if she still has the strength, then laughs. At that very moment, Mingyue reacts fast and throws a cactus thorn into his neck. He turns in anger, asking who did that, and she steps out, calling for Manfei to come with her. Meanwhile, on the ground, she is in tears, thinking that Mingyue has come to save her, yet also feeling she must be happy to see her like this. However, the danger is far from over, because Zeta pulls out the thorn and calmly speaks, saying she looks good, and that he had planned to deal with her after finishing with Manfei. Hearing this, she is shocked and realizes he should have been affected by the poison, yet he still stands strong. As if that is not enough, he suddenly throws Zine away, and she cries out his name in panic. Then he moves closer and says that since she is already here, she can join as well, making it even worse. She quickly pulls out her knife and tries to stab him, refusing to give in, but he grabs her hand and compares her to Manfei earlier, saying she will also end up obedient. As he holds her and leans closer, telling her to listen if she wants less suffering. And just when it feels like all hope is lost, Jialan bursts in his lion form, attacking and telling him to let go and not touch Mingyue. On seeing him, she calls out his name, but then her heart sinks as she notices his body covered in wounds that are still bleeding, making us wonder what he has gone through to reach this point. Now the scene grows even more intense as Jialan is on top of Sita, and we hear him speak calmly, calling him an old friend and saying even the torture chamber he prepared could not stop him. However, he does not waste time and quickly shouts at Manfei, asking why she is still standing there and telling her to run. He also tells Mingyue to run, and both of them move at once. Yet, just when it seems like they might escape, they are suddenly blocked by Lisi, who stands there with guards. He calls out to Lord Sita, and even while still being attacked, the leader responds, saying it is just in time and orders him to catch them all. Then, pulling off his eye patch, he commands that none of them should escape, and suddenly turns into an eagle. At this point, the danger rises again as he begins speaking to Manfei, mocking her state and reminding her of how proud she used to be. He brings up the past, saying she used him and made him take the blame, calling this her karma. He then adds that although her heart is dark, her face is still good, and says that when Zeta gets tired of her, he might still accept her. Honestly, this guy is just shameless. However, just when it seems like things might get worse, Mingyue steps forward and slaps his hand away, refusing to let him continue. She stands firm and challenges him, asking what he thinks women are. In response, he mocks her, calling her foolish for protecting someone who once tried to harm her. Yet she does not back down, and explains clearly that she already knows what Manfei did, and it is her own choice how to deal with it. She makes it clear that it is not his place to punish her. Then she continues, saying that since women are often weaker in fights against men, they must stand together. She firmly states that she is not protecting Manfei, but instead protecting a woman who is being abused by a man. On hearing Mingyue's words, Manfei's eyes widen in shock. At the same time, Lacey grows even angrier as he raises his voice and stretches his hand toward her. He tells her that if she wants to help, then she should go and take Manfei's place with Lord Sita. Just when the situation is about to turn worse, Zine suddenly rushes in his beast form, declaring that he will not let anyone hurt Mingyue, and immediately starts pecking Lacey's head again and again. This catches him off guard, and he cries out in pain, but quickly transforms into a giant lizard and slams him against the wall. Without stopping, he orders the guards to capture both females and then grabs Zine, trying to put him into his mouth as he mocks him for overestimating himself. At this point, Mingyue is being held tightly, and when she sees him about to be eaten, she panics and calls out his name, her mind racing as she tries to think of a way to save him. However, just when it seems like there is no way out, Brave White suddenly appears again and reminds her that her lightning skill is now available. She quickly begs to use it and asks for help to strike Lacey and save Zine, but then learns that shouting alone is not enough. This leaves her in a tight spot, since she has no one to kiss, and she refuses to kiss the guards. In a desperate moment, she imagines Jia-lan and calls for the lightning, feeling embarrassed right after, thinking how lucky she is that no one knows what she imagined. Then, suddenly, lightning strikes down and hits Lacey, knocking him to the ground. The guards are left confused, wondering what just happened, and before they can react, arrows start flying toward them. She turns to see who is helping, only to find the same woman she saved earlier. The woman steps forward and thanks her, saying now it is their turn to help. Mingyue tells Jia-lan she will be quick. She asks him to stay with her. Slowly, he opens his eyes and reaches out, touching her face as he calls her name. She quickly reassures him that it is her, and that they are safe now. She tells him not to worry. Then she begins to ask what really happened after Meng Tai and she left. She wants to know why he was covered in injuries when he came to rescue her. He coughs first. Then he explains that when he found out Manfei was in Sita's hands, he went to save her. Traps had already been set for him, and after escaping those traps, he ran and found her. Hearing this, she suddenly turns her face away and pretends to be angry. She says he went to save Manfei while she was just following along. Immediately, he denies it. He explains that she's the most important to him, but he could not ignore Manfei because her father once saved his life and raised him. At that point, she softens. She smiles and touches his cheeks. She tells him she was only teasing and not truly angry. Seeing him still full of energy makes her feel relieved. Moreover, she adds that since Manfei was captured by Sita, it is normal for him to go and save her. She understands because she would do the same. At the same time, we shift to Manfei, sitting alone. She begins to think deeply about everything that has happened. She remembers how she tried to harm Mingyue again and again in the past. Yet she still cannot understand why she came to save and protect her. In addition, she recalls hearing from other women that Mingyue even went through every single room in Sita's place just to find her. This thought hits her hard. Consequently, we can feel the change starting inside her. Mingyue is seen preparing a barbecue over the fire. She leans in, smells the aroma, and happily says the barbecue is ready. Then she calls out to Manfei, asking her to come and eat. She also tells her to call Zine and Meng Tai over. As Manfei walks away to do that, she quietly complains in her mind. She wonders who Mingyue thinks she is to be giving her orders. Soon, all of them gather around the fire and begin eating together. Zine enjoys the food and says it tastes very good. At the same time, Meng Tai also praises it. He calls her a goddess and says the barbecue she made is delicious. Meanwhile, she is eating too, with meat in her mouth. She adds that if there were seasoning to marinate the meat, it would taste even better. She says that when she gets the chance, she will find a way to make such seasoning. However, as the moment continues, she notices that Jia-lan is quiet and lost in thought. She calls his name before moving closer to him. Then she reminds him that he has been in a coma for 2 days. She explains that based on what she has learned since coming here, and with the help of Meng Tai and Zine's ideas, she believes there may be a rift valley in the southwest where new water sources could be found. Hearing this, he responds that such a place does exist, but it has never been fully explored. Nevertheless, since she has brought it up, he agrees they can go and check it out. He adds that if a new water source is truly found, it will help not only the Milia clan, but the entire Jaluxi tribe. As a result, she smiles to herself and thinks that although she does not know what he is worried about, she feels happy seeing him regain his spirit. A few days later, we see Jia-lan speaking to Meng Tai and Manfei. He says that the Rift Valley is full of danger and not safe. He and Mingyue will go to scout it alone. Therefore, it is time to say goodbye for now. Meng Tai agrees. He says he will take Manfei back to Milia first. They should return soon. However, as they prepare to leave, Manfei, sitting on the camel, turns to Mingyue. She says she should not be too proud because she is only lending him temporarily. When they return to Melia, he will still belong to her. Mingyue calmly responds that he is indeed her brother and will always be just a brother. This hits her hard. Yet even then, she reacts with anger. She says she had wanted to thank her for saving her, but now she only feels hate. All this continues as Meng Tai pulls the camel away. He tells her to save her strength since they still have a long journey ahead. In the next moment, we see Zine standing behind Mingyue. He says he has been away from home for so long and wants to return. He does not know when they will meet again. He opens his arms as if asking for a hug. She walks up to him and hugs him. She says they will cross paths again, and he is welcome to visit Melia. Jialan arrives and sees this. His eyes widen with anger. Yet she simply tells him to bring her diamonds next time. He agrees while thinking they will meet again. He then turns into his bird form and flies away. She waves him goodbye and thanks him for everything. All this while, he stands there silently, clearly upset. She turns to Jialan and tries to speak. She suddenly notices something is wrong. She pulls him closer, checks his body, and asks if he feels unwell after recovering for days. Because of how she touches him, he blushes. He then opens his arms and says he also wants something. When she asks what, he pulls her into a hug. At that moment, we realize he is simply jealous. Honestly, I would have laughed a little too, because that jealousy is kind of cute. Night has fallen by the time they reach the destination. Jialan immediately complains about the heavy rain and all the puddles around. Mingyue gently pulls his hand back. She picks up a stone and throws it into the sand in front of them. Watching carefully, she realizes that there is quicksand. Jialan, unfamiliar with it, asks for an explanation. She tells him that beneath the dry sand is water mixed with sand. Sinking into it would make it very hard to escape. He notes how the stone sank into the ground below. He asks if they can take the water underneath. She explains it is not necessary. She suggests moving forward cautiously, believing there must be a river nearby. They begin crossing carefully, avoiding soft spots. Soon, the air becomes thick with smoke. Jialan warns Mingyue to hold her breath because he has encountered this type of poisonous smoke before. She quickly identifies it as miasma and urges them to move faster. She thinks holding their breath alone will not be enough. They must rely on speed. After half an hour of careful movement, they finally emerge from the smoky area. Mingyue mentions she feels dizzy but spots a forest ahead. Suddenly, Jialan collapses to the ground. She calls his name. She realizes that despite his recovery, he is still too weak to withstand the toxicity. They decide to search the forest for herbs to help. She kisses his forehead and tells him to wait while she goes in. After finding the herbs, she prepares to return. A sudden movement catches her attention. A snake leaps toward her face. She freezes, realizing danger is still very close. Chloe is lying on the ground, frightened. She says she does not know if this is its territory and explains that she is only looking for eggs. She says she does not want trouble and begs to be generous and let her go. She even adds that she has a way to help the species quickly. However, as if that was not enough, she suddenly notices something important. The python is stuck while shedding its skin. She realizes it has been like that for a long time. Then she quickly speaks again, saying she hopes it sheds its skin and lets her go. She admits she does not fully know how, but insists she can help. Then, the python signals for her to come closer to its tail. Consequently, she understands that it wants her to help it shed its skin. She thinks it is hard to understand, yet she may survive if she helps. As she moves closer, she whispers that the skin is too dry, and remembers seeing a Cavanalesia arborea tree. She believes the water inside it can help soften the skin. Then she turns and points towards the tree, saying she has found it. About 20 minutes later, the water has been poured on the python, and it lies on the ground. She says the old skin is now softer. Then she grabs the skin and tells it to try moving forward. As it moves, the old skin begins to come off. Immediately, her eyes light up as she realizes it worked. She feels excited and praises it. Suddenly, the python turns into a human being, and we are shocked along with her. She thinks that although she has accepted the half-beast world, this is still too sudden. Yet she also notices that he looks beautiful. Then she accidentally looks at his private parts and quickly covers her eyes, apologizing for offending him. He responds by asking why she is covering her eyes and if she is afraid he will eat her. He says not to worry because he is not interested in weaklings. Then he asks for her name. She says Chloe and asks for his. He first says weaklings do not deserve to know his name. However, after a moment, he changes his mind and says that since she helped him, he will reluctantly tell her. His name is Peter. Chloe thinks in her mind that he is really hard to understand. Then Peter moves closer and says he does not like to owe people, and since she helped him, he promises to do something for her, even offering to become her male and protect her for life. However, she quickly says it is not a big deal and he does not have to commit to it. Then he questions if she is unwilling, wondering if her male is jealous and would not allow others. At that point, she suddenly thinks of Jake and remembers how jealous he can be. But she shakes her head and tells herself to stop thinking nonsense. She then explains that she only helped because she saw something wrong and that he owes her nothing. And since he has shed his skin, she still has urgent things to do and must leave. Yet, as she tries to walk away, he holds her hand and insists he will repay the debt, then offers to escort her because there are many dangerous beasts around. As a result, she thinks to herself that she only helped a python, and now he is clinging to her. In the next scene, we see Chloe return to Jake with Peter following behind. She has already ground the herbs into a mixture and is feeding it to him as he lies on the ground. As he watches this, he asks if that is her male, saying he looks weak for waiting to be rescued, and questions why she likes him. However, she immediately defends him, saying he is not weak, but only went through a fierce battle and was later exposed to miasma, which made him like this. Then he smiles and points out how protective she is, saying it seems she really likes him. This makes her think deeply, and she begins to wonder if she truly likes Jake. Yet she also reminds herself that she does not belong in this world and will have to leave someday, so she questions the point of liking him. We are drawn into the moment as Chloe checks on Jake and asks how he feels, and he slowly wakes and greets her, saying he is glad she is okay. However, he quickly blames himself, saying he promised to protect her and yet failed. She gently pats his back and tells him he has done well and should not blame himself, adding that she is not weak and not someone who can only wait for protection. Just then, Peter interrupts with a fake cough, and immediately the mood changes as Jake stands up and demands to know who he is. In response, he looks at him coldly and says he is too weak to even deserve to know his name, which makes him even angrier as he steps closer. However, she quickly steps in and says they should not act like this, explaining that one is her friend and the other is too, and that they should all get along. Yet, as if that was not enough, he suddenly grabs her hand and pulls her close, saying he is not just her friend but her male and that they are not on the same side. Then, Peter also grabs her hand and pulls her, saying he cannot protect her and does not deserve to be her male. As a result, both of them begin pulling her from both sides, one claiming she belongs to him while Peter questions if she even agreed. In that tense moment, she feels overwhelmed and thinks it is too hot, then finally shouts and frees her hands, telling them that if they continue like this, she will not belong to anyone. The situation calms as Jake agrees to try to get along, and Peter also says he will, reluctantly, for her sake. She joins their hands together to make them shake, saying they should move forward since there should be a water source ahead. After some time, they finally see a waterfall, and she lights up with joy, calling it spectacular while he confirms they have truly found a water source. And the other also admits he did not expect such a place. Moreover, she admits she has not taken a bath for several days and feels uncomfortable, saying she wants to bathe, and one tells her to go while he keeps watch, while the other says he will watch him instead. As she walks away, she wonders if it is safe to leave them alone, but then decides to ignore it because she really needs to bathe. Then she removes her clothes and enters the water, and immediately feels how cool and comfortable it is. Some wildebeests appear and notice Jake and Peter. One of them says it is unexpected to see two strange males here, so he immediately questions them. Then he asks what they want, but the other responds that this is their territory and any males here belong to their leader, so they should be captured and offered to him. Meanwhile, in the next scene, we see Chloe still in the water, bathing and even singing, unaware of what is going on outside. However, as if that were not enough, David walks close to where she is and notices female clothing on the ground, which makes him wonder whether a woman has entered the holy spring by mistake. Consequently, she senses someone nearby and quickly reacts, covering herself and shouting, then turning to see him. At that moment, he looks at her and thinks about how pretty she is, but she immediately tells him to go away and warns that she will call someone if he does not leave. Honestly, I like how she doesn't panic and stands her ground. However, the situation worsens when he responds that she is bathing in their holy spring and dirtying it, and even dares to threaten to call more people, while also saying that, because she is pretty, he could beg the leader to forgive her. Then he tries to reach for her, but she quickly slaps his hand and refuses, calling out both Peter and Jake for help. As a result, she moves farther into the water to avoid him, yet he suddenly warns her to come back because the water is dangerous. The wildebeests are already beaten and lying on the ground after facing Peter and Jake. Even then, he still admits the other is stronger than he thought, and the other responds the same way. However, everything changes in an instant when they hear Chloe calling out for them, and immediately they both react and rush toward her. As they arrive, they see David standing there, and without hesitation, Jake grabs him by the neck and demands to know where she is and if he is the one who bullied her. As he struggles, he protests, asking how they dare treat him like this. Just then, Chloe comes out of the water and quickly tells them to close their eyes, saying no one is allowed to look at her. In that moment, she feels embarrassed because she has no clothes on. Instantly, he throws David into the water and pulls her into his arms, asking if she is okay, and saying he will punish him however she wants for bullying her, as she begins to put on her clothes. Meanwhile, she thinks in her mind that even though this is embarrassing, Jake looks cute like this, and then agrees. At the same time, David is still in the water, struggling and shouting for help because he cannot swim. He looks at him coldly and throws a stone at his head, asking if he is afraid now and saying he dared to bully his female and wishes to die. As a result, the situation becomes even more serious as he begins to drown, and just when we think it cannot get worse, a crocodile suddenly appears in the water. Immediately, Chloe's eyes widen as she realizes it is a Nile crocodile. I'm guessing this is where things go bad. We are thrown into danger as Peter instantly turns into a snake, and Chloe quickly warns him that there is a Nile crocodile and that it is extremely ferocious. Even though the man is huge, she says he does not deserve to die and asks him to help. He responds that it is troublesome, yet still goes into the water, grabs David with his teeth, and strikes the crocodile with his tail. As he pulls him out, the man says he thought he was going to die, but just when it seems like things are getting better, more crocodiles suddenly appear. Immediately, she shouts for him to be careful, and in that moment, she realizes there are too many crocodiles in such a small place. Meanwhile, David is still clinging to him and panicking, saying they are finished, but Peter shouts at him to keep quiet. As the tension rises, Chloe thinks quickly, realizing that if this continues, even Peter cannot win. And although Jake is strong, he is not used to fighting in water. As a result, she forces herself to calm down and decides they must use their brains instead of force. Then she remembers the weakness of the Nile crocodile, and suddenly calls out that their weak point is the eyes. At the same time, she notices creatures flying in the sky and recognizes them as stone plovers, recalling their relationship with crocodiles and realizing that finding their nest could lead to the crocodile's lair. An idea forms in her mind, and she is sure there is a way to quickly save them, then turns to Jake and asks for his help. Our girl watches stone plovers. Chloe and Jake move carefully, and suddenly he turns into his lion form while she climbs onto his back. Then she says they should keep following the stone plovers, and once they find their nest, they will find the Nile crocodile's lair. She explains that it is the crocodile's breeding season, and therefore, they can use the eggs to threaten the mature ones to stop the attack. As if that is not enough, she points out that it should be around here, and just then, we notice the stone plovers settling, confirming her thought. He then returns to his human form, and she decides they should split up. As a result, she takes one direction while he goes the other way, and they need to be quick. She also explains that since all the crocodiles are out, none should be guarding the lair. However, he still asks what the lair looks like, and she calmly explains that he should look for mud mounds covered with dead grass and leaves, since there is a high chance the eggs are hidden inside. He agrees, and we can't lie, that plan actually sounds smart, like I would have followed it too. Not long after, we see him find the crocodile's nest and immediately call out to Chloe, letting her know he has found it. Then he picks one of the eggs and gives it to her, and she confirms that it is indeed a crocodile egg. They waste no time and decide to go and save Peter. Without hesitation, they rush back to the location where he is in the water. I just hope they make it in time. Now we are thrown right back into the tension as Peter is still in the water, fighting the crocodiles. He thinks to himself that it has been a long time, yet the crocodiles are still many, and the fight is not over. Suddenly, he hears Chloe calling out that they are back, and he turns to look. At that moment, we see Chloe riding on Jake in his lion form, holding crocodile eggs in her hands. She warns the crocodiles to leave at once, or she will smash the eggs, and as a result, they all begin to retreat. Because of this, he is finally able to leave the water freely with David. Then Chloe quickly asks if he is okay, or hurt anywhere, but he responds calmly that those crocodiles cannot hurt him, and even without the threat, he could handle them. However, just when it seems over, the crocodiles return, and David panics, telling them to run, leading them away. He takes them to his tribe and says it is part of the Argentina tribe, then explains that since they pulled him into the water and almost had him eaten, it is only right that they saved him. Moreover, he adds that Chloe looked very beautiful when she came to save him, and he says he likes her and invites her to stay as long as she wants, even calling her sister, which makes Jake and Peter quickly cover her up. Soon, other members of the Argentina clan arrive and accuse the two males of beating them earlier. They question them angrily, and when Peter asks who they are, the villagers insist it happened at sunset near the waterfall. At that point, Jake and Peter recall fighting the wildebeests and admit it, and the villagers demand justice. Then David steps in and tries to calm things, calling them his friends and guests, but the deputy chief becomes angry and accuses him of siding with outsiders. She orders revenge for their injured people, and as the tension rises again, Chloe thinks to herself that this is getting out of hand over a misunderstanding. Then the villagers of the Argentina tribe charge toward Peter, Jake, and Chloe, and she immediately thinks that they did not come here to fight. She wonders if there is a way to escape without getting hurt. Suddenly, an idea comes to her, and she quickly shouts and makes a hand signal. Instantly, the villagers freeze. She tells them that they came with no intention to fight, and presents a bunch of leaves as a small gift, hoping it will clear past problems. The villagers begin admiring the leaves, commenting on how fresh and delicious they are. Chloe reflects that wildebeests are picky eaters and love fresh grasses, and she had picked them earlier as a greeting. Then a voice orders everything to stop, and all the villagers bow, greeting the leader, Esther. Chloe notices another person and wonders if this is the leader. Jake asks Esther if she is the tribe leader and questions why their tribe attacked them at the waterfall when they were only defending themselves. Esther listens to one villager explaining that they wanted to capture 2 males to give to the chief. But she stops him mid-sentence, calling him reckless. She addresses Chloe after hearing about her from David, and Peter immediately asks what she wants. Esther apologizes for her tribe's men having offended them and invites them to stay, offering hospitality. But the deputy chief protests, insisting the outsiders have hurt their people. Esther calmly explains that their men first offended the visitors and that they cannot settle disputes by bullying others with numbers. She reassures that the 2 males already have their females and have no interest in stealing others' males. She then asks them to come with her. Jake and Peter hesitate, asking Chloe if they must go, and she smiles, placing one hand on her head, agreeing to go with the chief. Chloe reflects that she wants to believe in the good intentions of the world and has an important reason to cooperate with the Argentina tribe. Then Esther tells them not to be so formal and to just call her Esther. One of the villagers turns to the deputy chief, Sarah, asking if that is correct, and she replies angrily, saying that they beat people up like that and questions how they can let them go easily. She touches her face and adds that there is no need to rush, because once they enter their place, they will have many ways to deal with them. In the next scene, Chloe is stunned as she steps inside a cave, amazed by its size. David explains that the cave is large with many stone chambers, each assigned to a household. He points out his own house and says she can stay in the vacant chamber next to his. Suddenly, his little sister, West, appears, and he greets her while introducing her to Chloe. She greets Chloe politely, and as Chloe touches her face, she thinks that West is so cute and well-behaved. Watching this, Jake reflects that Chloe really loves kids and thinks about the future, imagining that they will have their own children. Then West suddenly coughs, and Esther exclaims that she's burning again and should be taken inside to rest. Inside, the chief priest, Esther, and Chloe watch West lying down, and Chloe asks what is wrong. Esther explains that many in the tribe suffer from a strange disease that starts with coughing but worsens, leading to fever. She adds that both David's parents died from it, and West began coughing some time ago. Chloe offers to take a look, thinking to herself that a strange disease affecting most of the tribe could be a wildebeest plague, and she wonders how serious it might be. Chloe watches West lying on the bed, coughing, and gently touches her hand. She asks David when the coughing and fever started and who West usually comes into contact with. He explains that it began 10 days ago, and that she mostly stays home, meeting only him and the chief. Chloe remembers that their parents died from the same disease and asks when they passed away. David replies that it was over a year ago, shortly after West was born. Chloe thinks to herself that it does not sound like the disease is contagious, but she wonders why so many people in the tribe are sick. Observing 2 plants nearby, she realizes they can reduce fever and relieve cough, telling David to collect them while noting that she hasn't found a radical cure yet and that these plants only relieve symptoms. David immediately brightens and thanks her, then runs off to gather them. Esther reminds David to stay and entertain the guests, and he agrees, promising to return after taking care of Chloe's request. Later, he returns with wild fruits for Chloe, Peter, and Jake, offering them and noting that they must be hungry after a long day. Chloe takes the fruit while Jake smells it curiously, asking what it is. Peter explains that their tribe calls them horned melon. Chloe cautiously asks where they were picked, recalling that the swamp area has a strong miasma, and that almond melons grown there might contain toxins. David confirms he picked them near the swamp but could not eat them himself, leaving them untouched. Just as Jake reaches for the fruit, Chloe quickly stops him. Chloe holds the fruit in her hands and realizes that it might be the cause of the strange illness in the Argentina tribe. She thinks the wild fruits contain miasma toxins, and even a small amount can cause symptoms if eaten in excess. She brings out some herbs that were given to Jake to remove leftover poison and admits that she is only guessing and is not certain the illness can be completely cured, especially since West is still so young. Jake pulls her gently by the shoulders, saying this matter should be discussed with the leader, and she agrees. Peter, holding a fish, notes that it's late and suggests they continue the discussion tomorrow. He offers the fish to Chloe since the horned melons can't be eaten. She asks when he caught them and if it was at the waterfall. He smiles and reassures her that he will never let her freeze or starve. Jake and David run off, shouting that they will find food for her, showing how much they care. The next day, Chloe explains the possible cause of the disease to Esther, noting that the tribe eats the wild fruits daily. Esther responds that if the herb works, it could save many people. Chloe admits she isn't sure if the fruit is the main cause. Drake suggests testing the medicine on a patient, acknowledging the risks but noting that success could save many. Esther agrees to find someone willing to try. Unknown to them, a villager hides behind a wall, thinking that this could be an opportunity for revenge. Later, Esther announces that a volunteer has been found, and everyone is scared except Drake. Drake, coughing, accepts the medicine, wanting to help his people even if it costs him his life. Other villagers encourage him, shouting that he is brave and that they will protect him. Chloe hands the herbs to Drake, explaining that they are made from detoxifying herbs with better effects. He drinks it while coughing, immediately spits blood, and his brother cries out, showing the dangerous but hopeful path of trying the medicine. I hope this works. Jake watches in horror as Drake vomits blood from his mouth, drops the cup with the medicine, and collapses to the ground. Daniel shouts, holding him tightly, demanding to know what was given to his brother and calling for justice. The villagers immediately surround Peter, Jake, and Chloe, and she thinks to herself that the situation looks serious. She notices the blood is dark red, not the bright red fresh blood she expected, and realizes the cause might be different from what they suspected. She immediately asks to check on Drake, but Daniel keeps shouting that it is too late and calls for severe punishment, turning to Esther and saying she must act, or she is unworthy as a leader. Esther is speechless, unsure how to respond. Jake defends Chloe, insisting that there must be a problem and that something suspicious is happening, while Peter offers to take Drake so she can check. The villagers try to stop them, and Jake fights back, shouting not to touch their people. Peter tells them that even if they fight again, they will be defeated. Esther finally shouts for everyone to stop and promises to investigate. David intervenes, saying that the truth is obvious and that Drake and Daniel have staged the whole thing, calling them liars. Daniel counters, claiming that Chloe is risking the tribesmen's safety. Meanwhile, Chloe checks on West and sees that the fever-reducing and cough-suppressing medicines are effective. David confirms that she has fully recovered, having secretly drunk a bowl of the medicine and taken a nap. Chloe feels a sense of relief, thinking, finally, it works, as she sees the success of her careful preparations. The tension between the villagers and the outsiders slowly fades, showing how quickly fear and misunderstanding can arise, but also how reason and courage can set things right. Chloe is filled with excitement as she comes closer to West and sees that she has really recovered. Daniel shouts, accusing the outsiders of trying to excuse themselves, but Jake quickly reaches out and insists that Chloe be allowed to check. Drake, frightened, drops his act and admits that his brother forced him into it. Another villager questions Daniel's actions, and Chloe confronts him, revealing that the blood was faked with animal blood hidden in Drake's mouth, showing the effect of coughing blood. Drake admits she guessed correctly and asks for another bowl of medicine because he truly is sick. Esther demands an explanation from Daniel, pointing out that he nearly cost the tribe the chance to cure the illness and orders him to be punished. Daniel protests, unable to understand how outsiders could find a cure, but the villagers agree with Esther and demand that he be arrested. Chloe thanks West for bravely taking the medicine, warning her not to do such dangerous things again, and West expresses trust and a desire to get better quickly so her brother can be happy. Esther apologizes for almost letting injustice happen, and Chloe modestly admits she had some selfish reasons, hoping to gain access to water from the waterfall. Jake tries to stop her, but she insists she can do something for her tribe. Jake realizes from her words that she considers Molly her home and that she might be agreeing to be his female, widening his eyes in surprise. Esther, representing the Argentina tribe, promises Chloe that during her reign, Molly has full permission to draw water from the holy spring. However, she feels this is not enough and offers to let Chloe choose a few males from the tribe, or if she wants, David. Jake and Peter immediately shout Chloe's name, making her heart warm at the thought of bringing back a few wild beasts to raise and feed. Her daydream is cut short as they pull her, Jake claiming she is his and Peter warning him to let go or risk death. Chloe begins recalling all the males who have ever shown interest in her, even those from Dubai, and the villagers who once wanted her, and her head aches at the thought. She declines Esther's offer, thanking her and saying she doesn't need them now. Jake thinks as expected, she refuses, and Peter feels relieved. Esther respects her decision but mentions that the tribe will hold the annual male duel in 2 days, which surprises Chloe. West explains that in the duel, the winner is selected by the females, and she plans to choose her favorite when she grows up. Chloe finds the idea fascinating and tells Jake she wants to watch, thinking about how, in her world, males and wild beasts compete for mates in duels, and she has always wanted to witness it. Jake interrupts her thought, suggesting they stay a few more days, and Chloe feels excited, thinking, wow, that's great. In the dungeon, the deputy chief, Sarah, comes to see Daniel. As the door opens, he switches on the light, surprised to see her. She goes closer and tells him not to be afraid, that she will take care of him. He tries to speak about the chief, but she interrupts, saying she will handle it because she is the chief's aunt and must be respected. She reassures him that the outsiders will leave soon, and reminds him about the male duel in 2 days, urging him to compete well and become worthy of her. He promises to do his best, thanks her, and says he loves her, and she responds that she is kind to him and will not forgive those who put him in jail. 2 days later, at the competition ground, Chloe arrives and is amazed by how lively the crowd is. Villagers talk about her, saying she cured the strange illness and commenting on her beauty. Some even wish to be chosen by her. Jake notices how loved she is, while Peter dismisses the competitors as weak. West gives Chloe a flower, which she happily accepts, appreciating its beauty. The tournament begins, and a villager announces that females holding desert roses should go to the special viewing area to watch the duels and choose a male. Now this is what I'm talking about. Chloe is shocked, not wanting to choose, but West insists, explaining the rules and pulling her toward the special area, thinking to herself that she can only help so much. Jake and Peter watch, growing angry, frustrated that even with their protection, Chloe is being dragged by a little girl. At the special viewing area, West guides Chloe to a seat to watch, proudly saying that her brother will appear soon and that he is strong despite being young. Then Esther arrives and asks if she has changed her mind about choosing a male, even pointing out Jake and Ben as strong contenders who will likely rank among the top 3. However, Chloe politely declines, saying she has no intention of picking anyone, and instead asks about the flowers many females are holding. Esther explains that the top 3 males will receive many flowers and will then choose their mates from the females who offered them. Chloe thinks to herself and feels relieved, realizing that as long as the one she gives her flower to does not choose her, nothing will happen. At another scene, Jake and Peter walk up to a villager and say they want to join the duel. He thinks about Chloe and believes it is enough for her to have him alone, not wanting anyone else between them. Meanwhile, the other also insists on joining, even though he finds it boring to fight weaklings, and thinks there is no need to add another weak person beside her. The villager feels awkward and explains that the contestants have already been arranged and no more can be added. As a result, we can already feel the tension building, because both clearly want to prove themselves. Suddenly, a voice comes from behind, and we are introduced to the deputy chief, Sarah, who steps in, allows Jake and Peter to participate, calls them distinguished guests, and says an exception should be made. Both are surprised, thinking the same thing about her sudden support. However, she adds a condition for fairness. They must fight blindfolded and cannot transform into beasts, and asks if they accept. Although they both sense her bad intentions, they still agree, saying there is no need to transform to deal with this. As they step into the arena, she secretly plans to make them suffer and instructs a villager to ensure Daniel wins easily. Soon, the announcer declares the duel has begun and calls the first match between Noah and Jake. He steps forward blindfolded, and Chloe becomes worried, wondering why he chose to fight like that, especially when his opponent looks strong. The signal is given, and the crowd cheers loudly, making it hard for him to hear anything. At the same time, his opponent turns into a beast and charges, thinking this is the perfect chance to win. However, just as the attack comes, Chloe shouts a warning and Jake reacts instantly, grabbing Noah by the horns. In one swift move, he turns into his beast form and pins him down, forcing him to surrender. The crowd watches as the result is declared, and Jake wins the first match. He removes the blindfold, smiles, and thinks about Chloe, determined to take first place. Chloe breathes a sigh of relief, thinking Jake is safe, though she admits the last match was intense, as if he might have been knocked away. Honestly, I would have thought the same thing too. However, before that moment settles, the next battle is announced between Ben and Peter. She freezes in shock, wondering why he is so confident, especially after hearing from Esther that he cannot transform and must fight only in human form, which makes the situation feel very unfair. As a result, worry fills the air as we shift to the battleground, where Ben attacks first with a punch, yet it is easily avoided. In a smooth move, he counters with a kick that sends his opponent to the ground, leaving both Esther and Chloe surprised, and we can feel the excitement rising as she reacts with admiration. The tension builds again quickly as Peter refuses to finish the fight, and instead challenges his opponent to land a hit, which only angers him, prompting another attack in beast form. Yet even then, it fails as he crashes into the wall after being dodged, and the crowd begins to react loudly, some cheering. In contrast, others grow angry and start talking about teaming up against him. Consequently, he speaks boldly, saying only the weak stick together and calling everyone nothing, which shocks the crowd even more, while Chloe grows worried, thinking he should just keep quiet because the way things are going, it feels like he might be ganged up on once he steps out of the arena. Esther turns to Chloe and says she did not expect Peter to be so interesting, even calling it funny. Yet we immediately feel her reaction as she thinks nothing is interesting about such a poisonous tongue, and even notes that Sarah's taste is unique. Then the announcer declares that the match is over and that Peter wins, and although the crowd is excited, he adds that more amazing duels are still to come, keeping the energy high. However, just when we think we have seen it all, we are taken back to an earlier moment when David sits alone, repeating to himself that he cannot win, revealing his doubt. Just then, West arrives with news that his next opponent is Daniel. She explains that although he is not as strong as Noah and Ben, his horns are very sharp, and she once saw him impale a cheetah, which makes him nervous, as he admits the fight will not be easy. As a result, she suggests asking Jake for help so he can win and be chosen by Chloe. David recalls being thrown into the holy river and doubts he will be helped, but she insists and pulls him along. Soon he approaches Jake to ask, but she steps in with a cute face to explain everything. This makes him imagine having a daughter who speaks like that and think he would give his life for her, and even wants a lion cub with Chloe. At that point, he clears his throat and explains that there is no fast way to grow stronger, so the only way is to use one's own strengths wisely, and then asks what his strengths are. David waves his hand and says strong, yet Jake shakes his head and says no. Then he tries again and says agile, yet the same answer comes. However, things take a turn when Jake points and pokes his head and says it is his weakness. At once, we feel the tension rise because he shouts and reacts, saying who is weak and even threatens to bite him to death. Nevertheless, before anything gets worse, Wes steps in, holds him, calms him down, and tells him not to be impulsive and to listen first. Then Jake continues, and we are drawn into his world of lions, where there is a harsh tradition of infanticide. He explains how when a wandering lion kills a lion king, they also kill all the cubs, and as a result, we are introduced to a cub whose brothers, sisters, and father are all killed by a stray lion. The fear becomes real because he knows he is next, yet he still wants to live. Then the story deepens as Jake recalls being that cub, facing the stray lion. He admits he is afraid of pain and even shows where to be hit for a quick end. At that moment, we realize he knows he is small and weak and cannot win, so instead, he chooses to expose that weakness. However, the other side looks down on him and refuses mercy, even wanting to torture him. Yet that very act of showing weakness makes the enemy careless, and just when it feels like all hope is lost, the cub strikes back and slashes the wandering lion. He finds his chance, fights back, and survives. As we return to the present, David reacts with excitement, calling it cool. Then Jake explains the lesson clearly, that being small and weak is not always a disadvantage. Instead, if used well, it can turn the tide of a battle. As Jake walks away from David, he leaves the scene, yet his mind remains unsettled. Instead, he begins to worry and wonders whether David really understands what he was taught. However, before that thought settles, Chloe suddenly calls out to him, and he turns around. She looks at him closely and asks if the lion cub in the story was him. Jake smiles and replies that, as expected of her, he cannot hide anything. Then Chloe moves closer and pats his face, telling him he must have felt very scared and helpless back then. Meanwhile, she thinks in her mind that even though she has always known that infanticide is common among lions, she never expected Jake to go through it himself, and that being attacked by his own kind must have left a deep shadow on him for life. Jake then speaks calmly, saying yes, but he is okay now because it happened a long time ago. Later, he met the leader of the Mali tribe and life became better. He continues by explaining that the former leader was strong and kind, and he helped lost and rejected people. As a result, they formed the Mali tribe, where different species live together like family. Chloe suddenly understands this, and her eyes widen, and she thinks in her mind that this is why Mali has all kinds of half-beasts, unlike Argentina, which is full of wild beasts. Then Jake gently pulls her closer and says he hopes to continue the vision of the former leader, making Mali stronger and helping more people in need. Chloe responds that she believes he can do it. At that moment, the announcer calls for the competition to begin, introducing David, the youngest participant, and his rival, Daniel. Immediately, Chloe turns to Jake and says David is on stage, wondering if he has learned what was taught. Then she drags him and tells him the view is better over there, so they should sit and watch together. As this happens, Jake watches her and thinks to himself that she has suddenly become so positive, and he wonders if it is because his story touched her. He also feels that she's being very gentle, and he believes his painful past may have brought them closer. Meanwhile, Peter is watching them closely. He thinks Chloe and Jake seem closer after a short time, and he becomes uneasy, feeling they should not be this close, then angry, thinking he must stop them. At the competition area, where Sarah speaks to Peter, telling him that he should be very sure because she is not weak at all, and she will definitely win. However, Peter reacts with irritation in his mind, thinking she is annoying, weak, and difficult to deal with. He also feels she has no self-awareness, even adding that if he had known earlier, he would have knocked her down so she would not disturb him again. Meanwhile, the crowd is loud and energetic, cheering and shouting for both fighters to do their best as David faces Daniel. As the match is about to begin, David takes a deep gulp. Now, Sarah is sitting in one corner, and she calmly says that although it is a pity they could not defeat the two outsiders earlier, she has specially arranged for Daniel to fight the weakest one, David, and she expects him not to disappoint her. Then the fight begins. David rushes in and throws punches, while Daniel dodges easily and tells him he is too young and his wild movements cannot win. Yet David keeps trying and insists he cannot miss. Eventually, David lands a hit on him, but Daniel only laughs and strikes back, saying his attack has no effect at all. Consequently, David falls to the ground and cries loudly that it hurts. Daniel, confused, asks if he is okay and says he did not even use much strength, yet David is still on the ground pretending. In his mind, David thinks he's not done yet. And as if that is not enough, he suddenly shifts into his beast form and attacks again, pushing Daniel back so hard that he nearly falls out of the arena. Outside the ring, Chloe shouts for him to finish it. At that moment, David, still charging in beast form, thinks that he has to win this game because of his sister, and he keeps rushing forward with full force. Just then, something unexpected happens. David is hit in the leg by a stone and falls to the ground. At once, Chloe becomes frightened and asks what is going on, wondering why he has suddenly fallen. However, Jake observes and says it seems like something flew past him and hit his leg just now. Chloe responds that she did not see anything and that no one else did either. Even so, she begins to think that lion eyesight is much better than human eyesight, and that wild beasts can see moving objects even from far away. Meanwhile, Daniel turns to David and accuses him of playing tricks. Then he transforms into his beast form and charges forward, saying he will make him pay for his stupidity. David, still on the ground, responds that a soldier never deceives and calls the other one stupid. However, the attack is too strong, and Daniel successfully knocks him out of the ring using his head. As a result, David falls outside the arena. The announcer then steps in and declares Daniel the winner of the round. We see David lying on the ground with tears in his eyes as he says he has lost, and he thinks he cannot become her sister's spouse. After that, people rush to check on him, including his sister, Chloe, Esther, and Jake. But David suddenly stands up and runs away from them, saying he wants to be alone and telling them not to come closer. Esther says he may keep hiding like this forever and adds that the fight is a pity, because he could have won if he had not stumbled. However, Jake thinks something is wrong and says someone from the side helped Daniel cheat. Esther is shocked and asks what he means. Chloe then replies calmly that there is no clear proof yet, so it is not right to say that. She also says David is her friend and she cannot watch him being plotted against, so she decides to investigate the matter. Another mystery to be solved. In the next scene, Esther is seen with the other females, holding West in her arms. The females praise her voice, calling it sweet and beautiful, and she responds with thanks, asking whether all the married females are present. One of them replies that everyone is there except the deputy chief. Then she instructs them to stretch out their hands, palms up, and they all obey. As they do, West begins sniffing their hands, and Sarah watches, growing uneasy. She thinks something is wrong, worrying that the floral scent is too strong and that her plan against David might be discovered. She panics, thinking no one should have noticed, and decides to wash the scent off her hand, but just as she tries to leave, Chloe stops her and asks where she's going. Meanwhile, Esther sits as she continues the gathering, calling out Sarah and Daniel and accusing them of cheating in the game, asking if they plead guilty. She explains that the male duel is important for selection and the future of the clan and says their actions are enough to expel them. Daniel quickly defends himself, saying he knew nothing and thought David simply tripped, insisting he is innocent. David, however, responds angrily, saying his loss came from the deputy chief helping Daniel and calls the win unfair. Esther then points out that Daniel is trying to shift blame onto the deputy chief, but he insists it is her fault, claiming she made him win and pushed him toward her for her own interest. At this, Sarah finally loses control and breaks free from the ropes. Angrily admits she wanted him to be first so they could be together, but denies his insult, saying he should look at himself and admit he tried everything to get close to her and please her. As Chloe hears everything, she speaks out and says that with Daniel's appearance, he still has the nerve to talk about the deputy chief's beauty. Then another person adds that he first tried to please the deputy chief because he clearly wants to gain a position for himself. After that, Esther coughs to quiet everyone, then faces both Sarah and Daniel and asks if they admit everything. At this moment, Sarah stands up and admits she was foolish enough to help him. Since it has been found out, she accepts it. She also says that if they want to expel her from the clan, they should go ahead. However, Daniel, who is still on the ground, shouts and begs the chief to be kind, asking not to be expelled and saying he does not want to leave the tribe, and asking for mercy. Esther thinks in her mind that she did not expect the deputy chief to admit everything so easily. She also reflects that Moshe has helped her since she was young and is her only relative. Then she finally speaks, saying she will do as they wish, and gives the order that Sarah and Daniel be expelled from the Argentina tribe and are no longer part of it. At this, Daniel reacts in shock and says no, then begs again. Meanwhile, Sarah smiles and tells Esther that she has grown up and has now put feelings first, which she says is both a strength and a weakness. After saying this, she turns and walks away. Esther then calls her aunt and asks if she is doing this to test her, but Sarah replies that maybe yes or maybe no, and tells her not to think too much of her because she is selfish. Then she continues walking away. Chloe then thinks to herself that the relationship between Esther and Sarah seems very complicated. After that, Esther smiles and says everything is finally settled, thanking Chloe and Jake for their efforts. She says she will explain Daniel's cheating later and that they should return to David's matter and continue the competition. However, Chloe thinks in her mind that she is not sure if Esther is really okay. Esther tells Chloe to wait, and as this happens, she turns to Jake and David and tells them to go ahead while she follows later. He agrees before leaving with the others. Soon, the two are left alone, and we watch as she asks why she was asked to stay. In response, she brings up Peter's identity, which immediately confuses her, since she only knows his base form is a giant python and never asked anything more. Because of this, she wonders if there is something special about him. However, she explains that although she did not plan to get involved before, the help given to the tribe changes her mind, so she decides to speak. She then reveals that the Belgium tribe is searching for someone, and from what she has seen, that person is him. At this point, we feel the shock as she reacts, realizing that the Belgium tribe is one of the 4 major tribes and questioning why they are searching for him, even wondering if he offended them. As if that is not enough, she recalls being told that the world is made of 4 tribes, and even remembers the warning about her death, which makes the situation feel even more serious, because if he truly offended them, then he would be an enemy to a quarter of the world. Then she interrupts her thoughts and reveals the truth, that Peter is actually one of the sons of the leader of the Belgian tribe, and this makes everything heavier as she realizes he is an heir to a quarter of the world. Still, she questions why someone so noble would come to Jake and stay in Argentina, and she keeps thinking about how someone like that could end up needing help to shed his skin, even imagining he must have gone through something serious. Then she explains the reason. He ran away from home to avoid marriage, since his mother arranged 10 female deputy chiefs for him to meet and choose as future wives for leadership training, but he escaped the night before. Because of this, she warns her to be careful, since those 10 are now searching everywhere. And if they find him beside a female like her, they may kill her. At this moment, she raises her hands and explains that their relationship is not like that, saying he only follows her because she once saved him, and he sees her as weak. So he protects her as repayment. Esther reacts and asks if it is really so, and while speaking, she thinks that Chloe is so focused on him that she does not care about others. Yet, even so, that does not mean others have no feelings for her. Then we see her ask for a favor, explaining that since Peter does not want to be found, she wants this kept a secret, and after a brief pause, she agrees. At the same time, she thinks about how the Belgium tribe is offering a year's worth of food as a reward for finding him, yet she still decides to repay her by pretending she has never seen him. As a result, night falls, and the scene shifts to the arena, where the announcer speaks about the end of one day and one night of combat, and declares that the top 3 have emerged. As they stand in front, he announces Jit in first place, saying that, before anything else, he must explain and congratulate them for breaking away from human limits and becoming members of the clan. Then Tom in second place, and Jack in third, and the females all clap. However, as this happens, she recalls how Ben lost and thinks about it deeply, while Peter also thinks that if not for Ben wasting his energy, Jake would not have defeated him. At the same time, we see West comforting David, who cries and admits he's still lost, while she encourages him by saying he is younger and still has many chances. Then the announcer calls the females to send flowers to their favorite warrior. And suddenly the crowd becomes loud, with many calling out for him while others shout for Tom and Jack. In the middle of this, Jake walks up to Chloe and asks if she is willing to give him the flower in her hand. And just when she is about to respond, she cannot find her words, but Esther pushes her forward, causing her to bump into his chest, and she congratulates him. He then says it is the best gift he has ever received and kisses her, making everyone around react and think it is romantic. Immediately, she feels shy, pulls away, says she has something else to do before leaving, and as she walks off, thinks about how embarrassing it is and feels she cannot face anyone anymore. Inside the special stone chamber, Chloe is standing beside Jake, both looking nervous as she talks about the reward for first place and how special the room feels, even laughing a little to ease the tension. Moreover, he also admits he heard that the rooms for second and third place are right next door, which only makes things more awkward. They both stand there not knowing what to do until he gently holds her hand and leads her to sit. As they settle on the bed, she notices something carved there, leans closer, and suddenly reacts, quickly covering his eyes and stopping him from seeing it, insisting there is nothing there. However, just when we think things cannot get any more tense, they begin to hear sounds from the next room, a female choosing Tom, then kissing sounds. Our girl starts to think the mood is getting too much, and when she looks at him smiling, her thoughts run wild about what might happen between them, only to snap out of it and scold herself. Then, as he moves closer and tries to speak, she quickly backs away, asking what he wants, but he simply smiles and points out her nervousness, saying he is happy because it means she sees him as her male. He hugs her gently and reassures her he will not do anything, that he is willing to wait until she accepts him fully before they take things further. As a result, she feels touched and realizes how much he has changed, from being forceful to now respecting her, and she quietly accepts this. However, their calm moment is broken again by loud sounds from the next room, this time from Jack, which makes both of them pull away in embarrassment. She then quickly suggests they talk about serious matters instead. Perfect escape plan, in it. At the same time, she recalls feeling something earlier and tries to distract herself, while he also struggles to stay calm. Then, shifting focus, he picks up a stick and begins to draw, explaining the problem of transporting water, the long distance, and the danger due to conflict with Nigeria. Furthermore, he explains the idea of building a bridge across the Rift Valley to shorten the journey and avoid danger. And as soon as he says this, Jake speaks to Chloe about the plan, and he explains that building a bridge across the Rift Valley will not be easy. He notes that the two sides are too far apart, so ropes cannot reach from one end to the other. In addition, he scratches his neck and admits that even if that problem is solved, it will still take a lot of people and time. However, she leans closer and says she has a way, and then she moves near his ear and whispers the full idea step by step. After hearing everything, he is shocked and says it now feels possible. As a result, he lifts her happily and calls her a true goddess, saying only someone sent from heaven could have such wisdom. She becomes shy and explains that it is not her wisdom but that of her ancestors. Meanwhile, he starts thinking that even though he promised to wait, maybe it would be okay now. At the same time, Peter stands near their chamber, unsure if he should enter. He imagines them being close and wonders what he would do if he sees that. He even imagines her having a child with him, and this thought leaves him confused about what to do next. He rushes in and finds him kissing her. Without waiting, he pulls her away and accuses him of forcing her. However, she quickly explains that it was a misunderstanding and that she only dropped a wild fruit by accident. She admits in her mind that she did not reject the kiss, but feels too embarrassed to say it. He then declares he will protect her and not allow any harm, and he pulls her away. She reassures him to wait as she will return soon. After that, both of them reflect on what almost happened, each thinking that if the moment had continued, they might not have been able to control themselves. As a result, she decides she needs to calm down before facing him again, knowing her self-control is getting weaker around him. Jake is now alone and he speaks out, saying that, as expected, he was impulsive just now and scared her. Meanwhile, in the next moment, we follow Chloe outside with Peter, and she asks him why he suddenly barged in. He then explains that it was to save her because he had promised to protect her, and that since she's weak, if she gets hurt, it would mean he had failed that promise. However, she tells him he is overthinking. Our girl thinks that someone who always risks his life to protect her would never hurt her. Yet he does not back down, and instead says that couples turn on each other, and even brothers betray each other. Therefore, males are far scarier than she thinks. As a result, she simply agrees and moves on, then asks about his identity, wondering if he is truly the son of the leader of the Belgium tribe. He confirms it, admitting that he wanted to tell her at the right time, but did not expect that she already knew. And he guesses she also knows about his escape from marriage. He laughs and says she does not need to persuade him because he will not go back. However, she surprises him by saying she would not persuade him at all, and instead she admires his resistance, explaining that such an important matter should not be controlled by others, since a partner is someone who stays for life. He is clearly moved and says this is the first time anyone has ever said such a thing to him. All his life, people have only told him to choose the strongest female and help her become a leader, yet none of them were worthy. Then she encourages him, saying he should find someone equally good, and there is no need to rush. And we can feel the moment soften as he looks at her and agrees, while thinking that maybe such a female is already right in front of him. That right there says everything. Finally, she brings up something new, asking about the tribal treasure related to the water god and the 4 tribes. Peter faces Chloe and asks about the treasures of the 4 tribes, and in response, she calmly makes up a story about a powerful wizard who once saved her life and asked her to gather the treasures. She explains that combining them can summon the water god and turn the desert into an oasis, while at the same time, she admits to herself that he would not understand the truth about space travel and the system, so she sticks to this story. Then he begins to explain a long legend, saying that long ago, the sun god grew jealous of the water god and set a trap to kill her. Before dying, she passed her power into a magic staff and gave it to 4 saints. However, the staff was split into 4 parts as the saints fled and hid them in the human world. As we listen, she reacts with interest and notes the history behind the treasures. And he continues, saying the land turned into a desert after her death, and the 4 tribes were built on those fragments, although no one knows if the legend is true or if the water god can be summoned. She connects the idea and asks if finding the saints will lead her to the treasures. And he confirms, but adds that only Max is still known, while the others are missing. She then recalls what Jake once said about Japan and Max being close, separated by a river, and he offers to guide her there since he knows the land well. Our girl realizes they may have to part ways because Jake must handle Molly matters. I can't seem to picture Chloe without Jake. Then, as if the story shifts again, we move to the next day at the Rift Valley Cliffs, where Chloe stands with Jake and she observes the place. She points out that the ground is stable and flat, making it a good place to build a bridge, and we can already feel that her plan is coming together. We can't help but notice how calm she sounds despite everything ahead. Chloe stands by the Rift Valley and she places her hand on her chin while thinking carefully. She then explains that they still need to check the other side and choose the right place to build the bridge there. She smiles and begins to guide Jake, saying she will explain how to choose the location so that later he can remember and decide where to build on the other side. He agrees, yet deep inside he feels uneasy, as if her words carry a hidden meaning. Then she continues, explaining that because the two sides are far apart, after choosing the spot, he can use a trebuchet to throw a rope across. She even hands him a drawing and says she's already made the plan. He just needs to follow it. As he opens it, he realizes she stayed up all night to draw it. And although he says it will take time to build and she didn't need to rush, she suddenly says she has to leave. He is shocked and asks where, but she calmly says she's going to Max to find the water god's treasure. He immediately refuses, saying it is too dangerous, yet she reminds him that his people need water and that he has duties. Just then, Peter steps forward and says he will protect her, and David also joins, saying he will go too. Still, he holds her hand tightly, but she gently touches his face and assures him she will return safely. He definitely doesn't want to let her go. Then things soften a bit, and he finally agrees, saying he will build the bridge fast and come meet her if all goes well. He asks when she will leave, and she says tomorrow, because the sooner she goes, the sooner they meet again. After that, he turns to Peter and David and tells them to take care of her, but they respond with pride and even argue with him, asking what right he has to say that. The tension rises, yet it turns almost playful as they all talk over each other. She watches them smile, and even though this is a sad parting, the mood shifts with their banter. In the end, she feels that even though they are separating now, it truly feels like they will meet again soon. In the next scene, David lets out a breath and says they have finally reached Max, and as he wipes his sweat. Chloe spreads her hands and notes that Max is much more livable than Japan, with rivers everywhere. As they keep moving, Peter suddenly notices something and stops her, warning that something is approaching. Just when we think it is calm, we see someone running while begging for mercy, saying he has returned everything and does not want his hair pecked off. We are shocked, along with Chloe, when she realizes it is Matthew. She calls out to him and he quickly runs to her, saying it is good to see her, but they must run because the vultures are dangerous. Nevertheless, Peter stays calm and says a few vultures mean nothing and offers to help since the person is an acquaintance. Then things get worse as more vultures gather, and Matthew panics, saying more are coming, while one of them even threatens that none of them will escape. The birds surround them, and Chloe cannot even open her eyes. Peter pulls her close, telling her not to be afraid, yet she worries that he cannot fight while protecting her. At the same time, David struggles and says they must break out to fight back, and that word sparks something in her mind, and she remembers checking her skills before leaving. Our girl calls the brave White, who shows up and even acts proud to be there, and she immediately tries to use thunder and lightning, but nothing happens, which confuses her and makes her think the system is broken. However, the brave White calls her out, reminding her she has forgotten what to do first, and in a sudden move, she turns and kisses Peter. Damn, girl. Then everything works, as lightning strikes the vultures and they scatter at once, leaving David shocked and wondering if God is helping them, while Matthew recalls a similar strange thunder from before. Meanwhile, Peter is still confused and does not even realize he was kissed, questioning what just happened, while Chloe feels guilty and thinks to herself that she did not mean to be rude, and that it was all because the brave White pushed her into it. In the next scene, Chloe moves closer to Matthew as she applies herbs to his injury, and asks him why he was chased by so many vultures. We get to know that he says he heard there were many shiny gems in Max, so he came to look for them. But on the way, he met a vulture that wanted to steal all his gems to make jewelry for their leader, and when he refused, the vulture called a group to attack him, trying to kill him and take his things, and he says he only managed to keep one gem. Chloe and David react, saying those vultures are bullies. They wonder if things have been this chaotic recently, while Peter explains that he has passed this way before but never heard of vultures, and he says there is a village ahead where they can rest for the night. Chloe trembles and says they should go there because she has not slept well for days, resting in the wind and mist, and she feels cold. Then Matthew gives Chloe the gem, saying he knows she likes shiny gems and hopes she likes it. She takes it and says it is very pretty, but we also see her thinking that it is a priceless tanzanite. Our girl wonders how much it would cost, while Peter watches and tells her he has many more beautiful ones at home and will sneak back to bring them to her. She thinks the most exciting thing in the world is getting rich overnight. Peter leads them to the village he mentioned. When they arrive at the front, guards stop them and ask who they are, and Peter speaks up and says he is an old acquaintance of their village chief, Alex. However, Peter thinks in his mind that it is strange because there were no guards in this village before. Suddenly, a lady steps out and says she is an old acquaintance of her father. She tells the guards to back off and not block the path of their guest, and they agree, but almost say "chief" before she looks at them, and they quickly cover their mouths. Mia tells him she will take him to her father, and he remains cautious, wondering when Alex had women. But she explains she is her father's adopted daughter and says he is kind because he rescued her when she had no one and gave her a home. Yet she also says her father has not been in good health and may not greet him, so she asks them to wait while she goes to explain first, and he thanks her. Not long after, we see Chloe notice a strange smell, touch her nose, and ask why the village smells like that. David agrees and says it smells like something rotting. Peter says something is wrong with the village, while Matthew, who has a poor sense of smell, thinks about why he cannot smell anything. Something is definitely off here. Meanwhile, the lady goes inside the hut and informs Alex that his old friend Peter has arrived. Soon, everyone gathers around Alex. He coughs lightly and says he did not expect to see Peter again so soon. Peter replies that Alex was once strong but now appears weak, his tone hinting at suspicion. Alex smiles faintly and explains that old age brings many problems. He then asks if they plan to rest there, and after another cough, adds that he will arrange a place for them. However, his daughter quickly says she has already taken care of that. Peter responds that they should not disturb him any longer, but Alex stops him. He says he has a request. After coughing again, he explains that he may not live much longer and wants to find a good home for Mia soon. He hopes to introduce her properly. Peter reacts with surprise while Mia lowers her gaze shyly. As Chloe watches everything unfold, she feels that the situation is happening too suddenly and seems strange. Peter speaks to Alex and says he cannot accept his request. Mia reacts at once and asks if he thinks she is not good enough, and he answers directly that it is true. We notice David, Matthew, and Chloe think he is too direct. Then he explains that his heart already belongs to someone else. And as he says this, he looks at Chloe and adds that he must protect her for life. Chloe is shocked and hides behind Matthew, and we get to know she thinks he is only using her as a cover because he always calls her a noob. Mia then speaks politely and says her father was being too forward, but we also see her inner thoughts as she looks down on Chloe and feels she has no right to compete, even thinking it could lead to death. She then tells everyone they must be hungry and goes to prepare food, ordering the guards who obey her. Mia later with an evil smile and a bottle, saying they should eat first before it is her turn. After some time, we see Matthew and David drooling over the food, while she invites them to eat as much as they want. She then notices Chloe is not eating, but instead is striking 2 stones and lighting a fire, which shocks her as she realizes Chloe can control fire. She asks what she is doing, and she explains that roasted meat tastes better, but she refuses and keeps eating raw meat while thinking they are wasting food, and that it tastes even better when rotten. However, Chloe watches Mia closely, and we see she feels something is wrong when Mia's neck and face turn red while eating raw meat, which shouldn't be burning. She then turns and holds the roasted meat, saying it is ready to try, and we're introduced to her relaxed thought as she cannot believe she can make this dish now, and links it to her transmigration, saying she should not be surprised by this smoked strongwort. David takes the meat and notices it is not fully cooked, and he starts to speak, but before he finishes, he sees her wink at him. He understands at once, accepts it, and thanks her. Then all of them gather and pretend to eat while commenting on how delicious it is. Mia smiles, and she thinks the fun is about to begin. Yeah, that smile is not good at all. In the next scene, we see David lying flat and complaining that he is hungry, asking Chloe why she told them not to eat the food Mia gave. She explains that she suspects Mia is linked to the vultures they saw earlier, and we learn that when those creatures eat, their necks and faces turn red to warn others, just like what she saw. Then Peter suddenly senses something and says there are at least a dozen people nearby as they hear sounds from afar. Chloe quickly tells everyone to pretend to sleep so they can see what will happen, and they all lie down except him. She then tells him that Mia likely put something in the food, but since she seems interested in him, she will not kill him directly, and therefore she believes it is some kind of sleeping drug. However, we see Mia slowly enter the room after they all pretend to sleep, and we learn that she believes they have fallen into her trap. She moves close to Peter and touches his chin, saying he can stay while the others are taken away, and the guards thank her as they carry Chloe, Matthew, and David away, saying they should not disturb her. She then touches his chest and speaks about how he rejected her and that she will show her power, and as she leans in, he suddenly opens his eyes and speaks, shocking her. She realizes he is awake, but he quickly uses his tail to wrap around her and hold her tight. She reacts with surprise, but also says she likes him more for waking early, and he, now in his python form, reveals they never fell for her trap, leaving her in shock. Yeah, that plan just failed badly. In the next moment, Chloe, David, and Matthew return and say they are back, and they say that they have already dealt with the people outside, who are the same vultures from before. Mia is shocked to hear this, and David confirms they are all gone and tells her to stop resisting since she has no help left. She becomes angry and shouts that they harmed her men and must pay with their lives. But Chloe responds that she failed her own group and let them bully others, and that she took over the village and controlled the chief and villagers. She then throws sharp feathers at her, but he blocks them with his tail and strikes her down, warning her not to harm the one he wants to protect. She quickly turns into a vulture and escapes, saying she was careless and will take revenge next time. Matthew suggests chasing after Mia, but Chloe stops him, saying vultures can fly very high and he may not catch them, and warns not to chase enemies into danger. We get to know her thoughts as she believes vultures are very strong and have almost no enemies, and even if Mia is hurt, he may still not win. She then says the most important thing now is to check on the village chief. In the next scene, they return to the chief's tent, and she asks if he is feeling better, while his wife replies that after taking the medicine, he feels more awake. Alex then speaks to Peter, telling him that, as an old friend, he should have warned him. But the vultures held his wife and the villagers hostage, so he had no choice but to obey them. Peter asks where the vultures came from since they were not here before, and Alex explains they arrived not long ago and seemed to be led by a deputy leader. Once they came, they took over the village, enslaved the people, and took all the food. His wife then adds that only old people and children are left, and they depend on strong young men who have not returned yet, so they do not know what to do. Chloe then thinks carefully and says it is better to depend on yourself than wait for others. And she notices there is enough water and good soil, making the place good for farming. She then suggests organizing the old people and children to start growing crops. In the next scene, the elderly villagers ask Chloe what farming is. She gives a simple explanation: planting wheat grains in the land, waiting for them to grow, then harvesting more, keeping some for planting again, and using the rest as food so the village can support itself. An old man reacts with surprise, calls it magical, and quickly goes to inform the others to try it. After half a month, we see that a lot of wheat has been planted. And we get to know her thoughts as she feels everything is finally done and did not expect to stay this long. And she wonders if the bridge work at Jake's place is going well, since this is the first time she's been away from him for so long. Just then, her thoughts are cut off as Matthew calls out and tells her to look, and we're shocked to see Jake arrive. He calls her name and walks up to hug her, and we learn that she first thinks it is not real. But then, from the familiar feeling, realizes it is truly him and that he came to find her. The reunion we've been waiting for. Moreover, Peter steps in and pulls Chloe away, asking Jake why he is here, and he answers that he is her male and came after finishing his work, asking if there is a problem. The two then face each other in silence, and we get to know her thoughts as she feels the tension and wonders why they act this way. She quickly changes the topic and greets him, then asks if he has learned where they should go next, and he explains they must either pass through the deputy leader's area or go through the misty forest. She agrees and says since he is here, they should speak to the village chief and leave the next day, while we get to know his thoughts as he notices how brightly she smiles at Peter. However, in the next scene, we see Chloe and the group arrive at London's territory, and we're introduced to a guard who stops them and asks who they are. She explains they come from Japan and need to pass through the capital of Max for business, politely asking. The guards stare at them and soon realize who they are, then say the deputy leader, London, has given an order that if the 4 of them want to pass, they must provide food for 100 people. We're shocked to learn this demand, and she questions why, but one of them pushes her and threatens to leave if they cannot meet it. Jake quickly catches her and reacts with anger, while Peter also steps in. But she stops them and tells them not to act rashly since they need to find the Saints of Max, and should not fight here. We learn her thoughts. She believes London is working with Mia for revenge, so she tells them to stay calm. Peter suggests going through the misty forest instead, and she agrees, saying even though it is dangerous, they are strong enough. And since London is targeting them, even giving them the food will not solve anything. She concludes it is better to go through the forest directly. As a result, we get to know Jake's thoughts as he begins to worry, feeling that she and Peter are getting closer and more in sync, and he starts to wonder if she has feelings for him. However, Jake holds Chloe and tells her it is fine to enter the misty forest, but they must be fully prepared because it is very dangerous. He suggests they find a place to rest first. She agrees, but remains doubtful. 2 hours later, we're introduced to a training session where Jigs tells her to kick her knees, not hard enough, and to try again, pushing her through repeated practice. She is shaking and thinks she did not expect full preparation to mean self-defense training, and she falls to the ground as she realizes he even has full tutorials for everything. We then see Jake explaining that she must learn many things, including grabbing a knife with bare hands, self-defense, close-range fighting, and even weapons like guns, arrows, daggers, and axes, all of which she must learn quickly. She complains that it will take forever, but he warns her not to be distracted and says he will add extra practice as punishment, making her cry out that she is already exhausted and cannot continue. This training is way too intense. Jake gives one condition instead of extra practice, and she immediately becomes interested, only for him to lean in and say she must kiss him. She is shocked and thinks he has become very bold, wondering if she should kiss him since it is not the first time. Our girl finally kisses him and turns away, asking if it is okay. He says it is fine for now, but warns that it will not be simple next time if she gets distracted again, while he makes it clear that he must use this training time to win her heart back. As time passes, we see Chloe leave the tent many days later, tired and sore from training, and she thinks Jake has finally stopped, only after making her suffer back and shoulder pain, though she feels he sometimes has selfish motives during training. And later that night, she hears music and follows it, finding Peter sitting in a tree playing, and she asks why he is not sleeping. He says he cannot sleep, and we get to know his thoughts as he recalls David and Matthew snoring and the lack of space in the tent. He then offers his hand and invites her to enjoy the wind with him, and she agrees. Chloe sits on the tree trunk with Peter, and he asks her how her training has been going lately. She replies that it has been good, and we learn that Jake even praised her, that she has already mastered the bow and arrow, and that she will start learning the dagger the next day. Peter says he could also teach her, but she quickly stops him, saying too many teachers will confuse her, while thinking she cannot let Jake and him teach together or they might fight. Peter then gives her a dagger, and she becomes very happy, calling it beautiful and asking whether he made it and what it is made of. He tells her it is made of snake scales, very thin like a cicada wing, but extremely sharp, and it has snake venom that can paralyze or even kill an enemy. She's amazed and thanks him, saying she really likes it, and she gives him a small handmade gift in return. He carefully takes it and says he is happy with what she gave him. In the next scene, we see Jake shouting at Chloe during training, telling her she is too slow and ordering 10 more laps. And she is shocked and confused, wondering why he is in a bad mood today. We get to know his thoughts as he remembers Peter showing off Chloe's gift to him that morning, which made him angry, and he decides to increase his effort to get closer to her. As training continues, he suddenly notices someone lying on the ground asking for help, and she panics and says the person looks seriously injured and might die soon, urging Jake to treat him quickly. Chloe speaks to the injured man named Luke and asks him to bear with them, while she prepares to apply a medicine that may cause pain. As she's about to apply it, Peter and Jake both stop her at the same time, each offering to do it instead. We get to know their thoughts as both feel there are already enough close ties around Chloe, so there is no need for more. She then agrees and tells them both to do it carefully. At that moment, Luke suddenly shouts and Jake explains he has not even touched him yet, while Luke asks why Chloe is not doing it herself, saying he is scared and in pain. Jake thinks something is suspicious about Luke, while Peter thinks he cannot let him succeed. They finish treating Luke after 1 hour, and Jake proudly asks Chloe if he did well, while Peter also claims his skill is better. She notices Luke does not look satisfied and asks him about his injuries. Luke introduces himself and says he has been living in London's territory, explaining that London captures young men for his own desires, and that his injuries are caused by London, but he escaped when an opportunity appeared. We're shocked to learn this, and she reacts by calling London perverted. Luke then thanks her and says he wants to serve her for life after recovering, but Jake quickly refuses, saying she already has him, and Peter also says he will protect her forever. She stops them and tells Luke he does not need to repay her and can leave after recovery, then asks Jake and Peter to leave so Luke can rest. As they leave, Luke holds the bedsheet tightly and thinks that London's plan to separate Jake and Peter is failing because they are actually united, so he must find another way. However, Luke recovers quickly and approaches Chloe while holding some fruit, saying he is fine again and that her treatment worked very well, then offering her the fruit to try. She is surprised as he continues, saying he also boiled water for her because she usually drinks boiled water, and she responds that it is not bad. He then says that he cleaned her tent and he starts massaging her shoulder, saying she has worked hard from training and should relax, and she again says it is not bad. As a result, David and Matthew quickly drag Luke away, and David says they need to talk to him while Matthew agrees they will stay with him. All of them are outside questioning Luke, and Jake asks him directly what his purpose is. Luke says he does not understand and only wants to repay Chloe. David insists he has been staying close to her on purpose, and Matthew agrees, while Peter tells him to leave now that he has recovered. Luke then asks why they are trying to chase him away, saying he has nowhere easy to go and only wants to join their group. He starts acting emotional, saying he will leave if he is not welcome. Chloe feels guilty while watching this, thinking she did nothing wrong but feels like she caused trouble, and she begins to doubt herself. She suddenly steps in and tells Luke not to leave, surprising everyone. Our girl worries about the misty forest and decides she must bring him back, but then she finds herself alone inside the misty forest, searching for him, unable to find the way back and feeling lost, calling out for everyone but getting no reply. Chloe suddenly sees Mia and London appear, and Mia tells her she is in her territory, and no one will respond to her calls. Chloe is shocked and asks why she is there, and Mia replies that she is there for revenge. Mia speaks to Chloe and says that Luke failed to create problems between her and the others, but still managed to bring her here, which she calls an achievement. Adam is with Mia, and she orders him to take out the weakest female first. Adam refuses, saying he is only there on London's order and not her subordinate, which makes her annoyed. Mia then attacks Chloe with poisonous stings, but she dodges them, and they hit the ground instead. Chloe sees the poison on the ground and thinks it is very dangerous, and she feels lucky she has been training with Jake, or she would have died. Adam comments that her skills are not bad, and Mia rushes forward, kicking Chloe to the ground. Moreover, Jake, Peter, Matthew, and David arrive nearby, and Jake shouts that Chloe is close. Peter spots 3 people ahead, and David is confused why there are 3 when there should only be Chloe and Luke, so they move closer. In the next moment, we see Mia standing over Chloe and threatening to slowly torture her instead of killing her quickly, talking about harming her face, limbs, and organs. Chloe thinks she must buy time until her skill is ready so she can escape. As a result, David suddenly rushes in, kicks Mia away, and Jake, Peter, and Matthew arrive together, saying they will not let this succeed. Chloe is relieved and tells them they are finally here, and Jake runs to her and tells her not to leave his sight again, and she admits she was wrong. Adam then throws his weapon and complains that 4 opponents are here, and it is troublesome. This is getting intense again. Adam throws his weapon, and Peter quickly blocks it with his dagger and tells Jake to take Mia and leave. Jake refuses and says he will not run, and he catches Adam's knife while telling Chloe to wait because he will take her away soon. Then David and Matthew shout that they are here to help. In the middle of the chaos, Luke suddenly appears behind Chloe, puts a knife to her neck, and tells her not to move and to follow him quietly. Chloe is shocked and asks where he is taking her and why he is doing this, asking if he is being forced and saying they can help him. Luke replies that he must hand her over to Lord London so he can become London's most trusted subordinate and enjoy power. But then he also says she used him in a plan, and he tricked her all along. Chloe realizes he dropped his guard and quickly hits his hand, making the knife fall, and she turns the situation around and holds his arm behind his back, thinking she must fight now. Luke struggles and asks how she dares resist, but she pulls out her dagger and says he forced her to do this, then cuts his leg. She slips and falls, and Luke looks at his injury and says the poison on the dagger is unexpected, but Chloe has already fallen off the cliff and will not survive. Now Jake, Peter, David, and Matthew finish fighting Mia and Adam and turn around to realize Chloe is missing. He shouts for her, and Matthew confirms she is gone, while David tells Peter to use his sensing ability. Peter checks and says there is no one nearby except them. Matthew suggests there may be other enemies, and Peter quickly realizes it is Luke, and says Chloe was likely taken into the Misty Forest by him. Jake agrees, saying they must find her immediately, and they all rush out. 7 days pass as they keep searching and calling for Chloe with no answer. Jake sits on the ground and draws her face while grieving and wondering why there is still no news. Matthew almost says something about Chloe, but David stops him and says she will be fine because she is smart and can escape any danger. Peter then suggests going to the capital of Max, and Jake agrees, hoping she may already be there waiting for them. As a result, they arrive in Kaduna City, the capital of Max, where people are talking about a goddess parade and a rain-making performance, and they say the goddess is mysterious and romantically connected to the leader. Jake hears this and becomes curious, asking a woman about the goddess in the story. She explains that the goddess arrived recently and that the leader once rescued her at a cliff near the Misty Forest, fell in love with her at first sight, and wants to marry her. Jake quickly asks where the cliff is, and she says it is near the Misty Forest. Just then, the crowd shouts that the goddess has appeared, and we see Chloe, beautifully dressed with the leader, while Jake, in shock, thinks it is Chloe. No way. Is that really her? All the villagers bow down and welcome Chloe as the goddess of Max. They ask her to bless them and beg her to bring rain. Chloe stands up, raises her hand, and says, "Let it pour." The sky quickly turns dark and heavy rain begins to fall. The villagers become happy and shout that it is really raining, calling her the rain goddess. In the crowd, Jake and David are shouting her name. Jake calls out Chloe and says they are here to take her back. David also shouts sister. Jake thinks in his mind that it is definitely Chloe. Chloe turns and looks at them. Jake becomes emotional and cries more, but then he also thinks Chloe has noticed them. However, he becomes confused about her reaction and wonders what is wrong with her. They continue shouting her name. At that moment, London draws his sword and points it at them, asking what they are doing and if they want to kidnap the goddess of Max. He introduces himself as the deputy chief of Max. Jake asks who he is. London replies that they have not met before, but they are still connected, and he repeats his identity. Peter tells London to behave and release Chloe immediately, or it will start a war between the two tribes. London says Chloe is here, but she is not their concern. He says their chief saved her and that he will marry her in 2 days. He also says she is not really Chloe anymore because after falling off the cliff, she lost her memory and is now only the goddess of Max. David and Matthew are shocked and ask if Chloe has lost her memory. Jake then realizes in his mind that this is why she did not recognize them. As a result, London waves his hand and says they are strong for passing through the Misty Forest and reach the capital. He says that since they entered his territory, he will take revenge. He orders his guards to capture them. Jake and Peter tell the group it is better not to fight now and suggest retreating. Jake agrees, but London orders his guards not to let anyone escape, saying he wants them alive or dead. Jake, David, Peter, and Matthew stop at night, all tired and breathing heavily. And David says they have finally gotten rid of the annoying enemies, calling London terrible. Jake then says it is getting late, and they should rest here and think about how to find Chloe tomorrow. Suddenly, a covered figure approaches them unnoticed, but Peter senses it and warns that someone is coming. The person in a yellow cover greets them, and Jake asks who it is, and the figure reveals herself to be Chloe. They are all relieved, and Matthew asks why she is there. She says she came to see them, and Jake quickly hugs her and says it does not matter why she came as long as she's back, while Chloe feels a bit sad hearing this. Peter then mentions that London said she lost her memory, and she confirms that she only acted as if she lost it. Moreover, Jake asks about her marriage to the King of Max, and she says it is just an act as well. David then asks what happened in the Misty Forest and how she got there, and she explains everything, including Luke betraying her falling off the cliff, and being rescued by King Jerry of Max. She says she agreed to act as a goddess and pretend to marry Jerry to repay him and help him with the conflict between the two groups. She also says that things in Max are calm on the surface but actually not stable, and Jerry will later tell her about the capital. Jake asks if Jerry has no feelings for her, and she says not to worry, and that she's not loved by everyone, and Jerry already likes someone else. They all still worry, but she says she will see them soon and brings out clothes for them, 2 guard outfits and 2 maid outfits, saying they can stay with her, though she only managed to get 2 sets of guard clothes and 2 sets of maid clothes. David and Jake win the rock, paper, scissors, so they get the maid's clothes, while Chloe tells them they look very handsome and praises them, saying they have learned well. Peter and Matthew receive the guard uniforms, and she tells them they look very beautiful, and she did not expect this result. Peter then asks if she did this on purpose, and she says she only had what she could find and that there were no more guard uniforms, then tells them to return to the residence now that they are changed. They all return to Jerry's residence, where they all sit together and are introduced to Jerry as the leader of Max. He greets them and says he has met Peter before and has heard about Jake, David, and Matthew, and that he wants to meet them. Jake thanks him for saving Chloe, and Jerry says it is his honor to have saved her, and he is grateful she agreed to help him. He then says the wedding between him and Chloe will happen tomorrow, which may bring peace or may not, so he asks them to protect Chloe. Peter immediately agrees without needing reminders. Later on, in the room, Jake asks Chloe if that is what she will wear tomorrow while touching the clothes, and she says yes because it is a wedding dress. He says he can help adjust it because it is her first time wearing one, and even though he knows it is only acting. He does not want to see her get married, so he insists on helping. She thinks it is strange that he is doing this, but notices he is serious and shyly agrees, unable to refuse him. Jake helps Chloe put on a dress, then suddenly kisses the back of her neck, making her blush. He hugs her from behind and tells her she is very beautiful. He says it would be great if she wore this outfit tomorrow, and that he wishes their first marriage had been between them. Chloe becomes emotional when we learn she has started developing feelings for him after spending time together. Jake then tells her to wait until they find Max Saintess, and he asks if she would marry him. She refuses, but he begins to cry and beg her. Chloe then says she cannot marry him when he has nothing, and she wants a house, a diamond, and a big table full of food. Jake interrupts and says he can give her everything she wants and will prepare it all, promising he will always stay with her and never change his feelings. She then agrees, and they kiss and they lie on the bed together as he continues confessing his love and saying he will never let her down. Amid all this, Peter stands outside the room, overhearing Jake say they are partners for life, and he becomes angry, clenches his fist. He thinks that he must settle his own matters quickly, or he will lose Chloe forever. As a result, the next morning, we see someone knocking on the door, calling Chloe the goddess and telling her to wake up. Inside the room, she is sleeping close to Jake when she wakes up in panic, realizing someone is outside. She thinks she forgot to make Jake leave and quickly gets up, looking for a solution. Jake also wakes up, and she becomes worried about being caught in her room with another man. She spots a container and tells Jake to hide inside it, but he goes in, only to come out again as she tries to cover it. While sitting inside, Jake thinks that Chloe has already agreed to marry him, but he does not understand what is happening. At the wedding, and Jerry speaks to the crowd, thanking everyone for coming to his wedding with the goddess and saying he believes that being with her will bring prosperity. He introduces a special wine that the goddess taught him to brew, calling it refreshing and capable of making people drunk and happy, and he invites everyone to drink and celebrate. The crowd cheers and drinks together. London, who is in the crowd, thinks this is the right moment to start a coup, while Jerry and his people become drunk. Inside the palace, Jerry drinks more and more wine and says he is not drunk, while still raising his glass. London insults him, saying he has no proper leader attitude, and Jerry angrily replies that he has no right to judge him either. London then responds that he could have been the leader if things were different, and tension rises as he brings in his men and asks if Jerry is going to rebel. Jerry laughs and says it will not be so easy to kill him, and he signals his guards. To everyone's shock, his guards are not drunk at all, and London questions how this is possible. Jerry reveals he already expected the coup and used it as a trap, saying he set a trap inside the trap to expose them. His guards then shout that they will protect him and fight the traitors. Damn, it's about to go down. Chloe thinks the situation is chaotic and decides she must escape, but Jake suddenly grabs her hand, telling her not to be scared and to come with him so he can take her somewhere safe. In the next scene, Matthew is treating Jerry's injury. Jerry shouts and tells him to be careful and more gentle. Matthew replies that he is sorry and says it is almost done, asking him to bear with it. Chloe then speaks and congratulates Jerry for solving the rebellion and clearing the internal problems in the tribe. Jerry holds Chloe's hand, and she is shocked. Jerry kisses her hand and thanks her, saying everything is because she agreed to act in his plan. Jake and Peter see this, and their eyes widen. Jake pulls Chloe away and says thanks is enough, but is it necessary to touch hands? Jerry then puts his hand behind his neck and apologizes, saying he cannot control himself when facing a beauty like Chloe. Furthermore, Peter reminds Jerry about his promise that after Chloe helped him act, he would take them to meet the Saintess of Max. Peter asks when they will go. Jerry replies while touching his injury that he is hurt and they are rushing him, and he says Peter's cold attitude has not changed. Peter answers that his blood is indeed cold. Jerry then agrees to take them, but says the journey is long and he is still injured, so he needs their help. Half an hour later, Jake, Peter, David, and Matthew carry Jerry on a chair as they move. Jerry tells them to keep going straight and says they will arrive by sunrise. The group keeps walking through the night, tired and angry, and all of them think they want to drop him because they are exhausted. By morning, they are still walking, and Chloe wipes her sweat and asks how long is left. Jerry then says they have arrived. They enter a building where the Saint of Max is cleaning with other students. Jerry points and says that the person is Max's saint, named Dora. Suddenly, Dora falls while cleaning, and Jerry catches her and asks if she is okay. Dora is shocked and asks why Jerry is there. Jake, David, Peter, and Matthew crack their fists and question Jerry about his injured foot. Jake quickly calms things down and says his foot was injured before but has recovered after the night, asking if there is a problem. Dora turns around and sniffs the air. She thinks in her mind that this person has been sent. Looking at Chloe, she begins to speak but pauses and says, "You are." Chloe then replies that she is Chloe, and she says she asked Jerry to bring her there to ask about the treasures of the 4 major tribes. While Chloe and Dora are talking, the boys are still beating Jerry, and Jerry is shouting for help. Dora suddenly speaks again and says she has been waiting for Chloe. She says she cannot believe she is finally meeting the reincarnation of the Lord Water God in her lifetime. She moves closer to Chloe and calls her Water Goddess, saying she has finally appeared. The boys immediately stop fighting. Jerry and Peter both shout at the same time, asking what Water Goddess means, and they question if Chloe is really the legendary water god. The others also react in shock, asking what. Dora continues and tells Chloe to come with her, pulling her hand. She says she has something that belongs to her and that it is finally time for her to take it. Chloe thinks in her mind that she had also suspected she might be the goddess in the system mission, especially since she can control wind and thunder. She also remembers hearing Peter's story about the water god and already guessing it. Now Dora takes Chloe alone and shows her that the treasures of the 4 major tribes are all gathered. Chloe's eyes light up as she thinks she did not expect all the treasures to be collected together at once. She asks Dora why the 4 saints did not each keep one part, as tradition says. Dora explains that after the 4 saints died, the treasures were passed down through generations. She says she is the 57th generation. She also says the other tribe guardians could not bear the loneliness and left all the treasures with her. Dora claps her hands and begins the restoration ceremony. All the treasures open at once. Chloe is shocked. She stretches her hand forward and says the staff returns to its original state. A magical light appears, and the staff transforms back. At the same time, Chloe's outfit also changes. Then the brave white person appears and congratulates her for completing the mission of finding the treasures of the 4 tribes. It tells her to press the button to use her divine power to create a desert oasis. Chloe asks it to wait and reminds it that it previously said she would be sent back to her world after completing the desert oasis mission. She then wonders what will happen if she does not want to go back. She begins thinking about Jake, Peter, David, and Matthew. She remembers her life there and feels torn between her old world and her new life. If you enjoyed this, let us know below. Until next time, ciao!